Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to part two of me versus the infamous Hip Hop Hippie. Flat Earth enthusiast versus Globe Earth, we'll call myself intellectual tonight. Give me 1 second. Sounds like I've got a. Oh, let me turn off the background music. Okay, anyway, so tonight we have a couple of people with us. We'll first start with the man that everybody knows, Craig, Fight the Flat Earth. Introduce yourself and say hello.
Hi, I'm Fight the Flat Earth. Hello.
Great, and
That's
now
what
we
you told
have
me to
our
do,
guest.
right?
And now we have our guest of honor, Hip Hop Hippie. How you doing tonight, sir?
Doing pretty good. What's up, everybody?
All
It's Hip
right.
Hop Hippie. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you
Yes, we can hear
loud
you.
and clear.
Right. Well, yeah, it's Hip Hop Hippie, aka Mad Mardigan, killing trolls. So trolls, go hide under your bridges. But just wanted to say hi to my beautiful fiance, Darlene. Her name's Dandelion. Sometimes you see her in the chat. And then wanted to say hi to my mom, my dad, my family. Love you guys. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Hey,
let's
one
get let's
one
get
thing
this.
I
Oh,
wanted
and
to one thing I wanted to bring up because I didn't see anybody actually do this, but I do want to bring up that if there's ever somebody that I'm debating with or is a subject of one of my videos, and his wife or girlfriend or fiance or significant other comes on in their defense, don't berate them just because they're related to them or anything. Just treat them with respect, because that's the only reason I did delete her comments, because I didn't want anybody to attack her because they were trying to get a rise out of you. And I'm not saying anybody did, but just letting you know that I wanted to be upfront about that, because I did delete some of her comments, but that was the only reason I did that. It was just to keep anybody from addressing her instead of you. So just to let you know.
Someone in
Oh,
the
well, that's
chat
cool.
said your volume is a little
But
low, team.
Okay, I'll fix that right now.
yeah, thanks Team Skeptic for having me on too. Really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm ready to talk about flat Earth.
All right, good deal. Yeah, so the last time we kind of devolved a little bit too much. We've agreed to have a very civil conversation, but at the same time, you don't have to treat me like I'm soft as warm butter. I am a little bit harder than that, so you can definitely say what you got to say to me, and you won't be hurting my feelings. Now, we have agreed to keep it to flat Earth and things associated with flat Earth. So we're going to stay away from government conspiracies. You're more than welcome to bring up moon landing, fake NASA images, anything of a scientific nature. But let's stay away from any kind of false flags or anything like that. Agreed?
Yeah, agreed.
All right, good deal. Now I'll turn the floor over to you, and I'll give you. Okay, we'll just start with here. What makes you think that the Earth is flat?
Well, there's a few things. Water uh, is one thing. Um, uh, Airplane level flight is another. Gyroscopes, the horizon, and Polaris, and the lack of Coriolis effect. Those are just a few points, but yeah, you know.
Okay. Yeah, so let's start with some that are a little bit more sciencey based, because we can always talk about things that look too far to be able to see on a normal. If you say, "Oh, according to the globe Earth, it's so far away," but usually those measurements don't come with any control measurements or anything, so you don't know what the refractive index is. It's really hard to determine, how far you should be able to see without taking the proper measurements. So let's stick with stuff like the gyroscope, and we'll get back to what we can and can't see. But right now, let's start addressing a few things like the gyroscope. Now, a gyroscope, of course, maintains its rigidity in space. Now, that's the whole purpose of the gyroscope, is that if we were rotating, we should see a 15-degree drift from what is relatively the starting point, because it holds its rigidity in space. Now, when we do this with mechanical gyroscopes, there are things that aren't, it's almost impossible. In fact, I can go ahead and say it is physically impossible to make a mechanical gyroscope that doesn't involve some kind of force being added to the natural motion of the gyroscope. So you do get some gyroscopes that don't drift with the 15 degrees, but typically those gyroscopes are meant for other demonstrations, not something as subtle as a drift. Whereas the something like the friction in a portion of the gyroscope will cause the 15-degree drift not to be there. It'll hold its place. When you use a non-mechanical gyro, like a fiber optic gyroscope, you always see the 15-degree drift.
Okay.
What's that 15-degree drift from, if not from the rotation of the Earth?
I don't know, but I wouldn't say it's proof of Earth's rotation. I mean, is it really scientific evidence that we're spinning? Because what is the observed phenomenon?
Well,
The
that's easy.
natural
That's
observed.
okay. So when you spin, you're doing you're accelerating. Okay, it's circular acceleration when you're spinning. So you can be maintaining, let's say, at the equator, you can still be going at 1,000 miles per hour consistently in a linear fashion if you were to plot that out over a linear fashion. But because you're changing your direction, you're accelerating. That's what acceleration is. It's not just a change of speed in one direction or another. It's also a change of direction as well. So when you're making this curve around the Earth, you're maintaining your speed. Let's say for the Coriolis effect, for instance, you're maintaining your speed of 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. But as you go north, that 1,000 miles per hour, which you conserve, it's conservation of momentum. So as it goes north, it conserves that the linear speed, and it translates that to higher angular speeds. In other words, 1,000 miles per hour, let's say at 45 degrees latitude, will be a higher angular momentum than 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. That's what something like the Coriolis force is, and that's where we make sense of something that doesn't make sense, like a projectile coming from the equator, for instance, going north. It deflects to the east. If you were to only take into account none of the fictitious forces that are there, which the Coriolis force is a fictitious, is a fictitious force. If you don't take those into account, you would definitely say that Newton's laws of motion makes no sense, because this projectile drifted to the east without another force acting upon it. You
Well,
can't get that without the rotation of the Earth.
well, if the Coriolis force was real, we would see it not only with our weight, we would also see it with, gravity, like the weight. Because, hold on, I'm trying to find what I was looking at. So, like you said, the Earth is supposedly spinning at approximately 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, because the circumference of the ball is smaller north and south of the equator. The Earth does not spin at a greater or higher speed lower latitudes. Portland, Oregon is at 45 degrees north latitude from the equator, and the purported spin of the Earth at that latitude is approximately 700 miles per hour. Portland, Maine is at 44 degrees north latitude, with the spin of the Earth only a tiny bit faster than 700 miles per hour. The Coriolis effect is supposed to put the plane in New York if the pilot simply tried to fly the plane straight and level toward Portland, Maine. This is simply not true. The pilot sets his heading toward Portland, Maine, and accounts only for wind conditions. The pilot makes no accommodation whatsoever for Coriolis effect because the Earth is not spinning. There's no Coriolis effect to calculate.
Okay, so
Um,
in powered flight, when you have, especially like in modern powered flight, they have constant corrections that are continuously going on. So if, let's say, they go into an area where it's a bit more turbulent and it blows them off course by 1 degree, let's say, well, they're just going to autocorrect back to that 1 degree. It just recognizes where it's at and where it needs to go. So if it's no longer pointing towards the area it needs to go, it's just going to simply correct itself. And it does that probably hundreds to thousands of times a minute. It's taking these corrections and trying to make corrections on flight.
you would also notice that within the gyroscope on the airplane, um, it doesn't show any sort of curvature or Coriolis effect.
Well, most gyroscopes on the airplanes have pendulous vanes. Well, mechanical gyroscopes on the airplanes have pendulous vanes that account for the gyroscope changing its motion over time.
Well, that would kind of negate the whole fact of the gyroscope because it's supposed to keep its rigidity in space. So there shouldn't be any added mechanism to uh, control or curvature or Coriolis.
Well, I
It would
believe
actually
the
make it.
gyroscope is more for maintaining the horizon, keeping level to the horizon, is what I'm pretty sure what
I
the
know,
gyroscope is there for.
but if there was a Coriolis, it would affect the gyro also. But
No, no, no.
um,
The gyro is completely separate from all that because it's not there's no forces acting upon it because it's actually free from any. It's like the pendulum that swings. Uh, it's free from the motions that are on the earth.
um, well, the Coriolis effect is supposed to be based upon the spin of the Earth and the fact that objects in motion over the spinning Earth are moving independent of the spin of the Earth once they are in motion. If they truly were a Coriolis effect on Earth, it would pose a real problem for plane flights. If a plane were to take off from an airport in Portland, Oregon, and a north-south runway and turn east to fly to Portland, Maine, the plane would never make it to Portland, Maine. This is because the plane would be traveling at approximately 560 miles per hour once it reached cruising altitude. The Earth, however, would be spinning at 700 miles per hour eastbound beneath the plane. The plane would never be able to catch up with the speed of the Earth's spin. The plane would be constantly losing distance over the ground at a rate of 140 miles per hour. Essentially, the plane would be moving backwards over the ground.
Yeah, but that's
What is
would be
found is,
as if that would be as if it was a ballistic flight, not a powered flight. A powered flight can make up for everything that you're talking about it's missing.
well, what is found in is the exact opposite. In a plane traveling eastbound from Portland, Oregon to Portland, Maine, would in fact have a flight time than a plane traveling westbound from Portland, Maine to Portland, Oregon. The reason has nothing to do with the spin of the Earth. The high velocity eastbound winds at high altitude, known as the jet stream, carry the planes along and allow the eastbound flights to have a faster ground speed. The jet stream can have wind speeds ranging from 60 miles per hour to over 250 miles per hour. The same
Yeah.
jet stream is a hindrance to westbound flights. It was reported on January 2015 that a British Airways Boeing 777-200 jet was able to travel at ground speeds in excess of 745 miles per hour as it traveled in the eastbound jet stream of approximately 250 miles per hour. Incidentally, the speed of sound is 760 miles per hour at sea level.
Yeah, but
Um,
the speed of sound is relative to the medium it's traveling in. So it obeys the same conservation of momentum that we obey here on the earth. The same reason why when you're driving in a car and you speak to somebody in a car, it doesn't sound like you're you're speaking while moving at 60 miles per hour. It sounds like you're speaking normally like you and I are speaking now.
if if the Coriolis effect was real, then artillery officers and snipers would be trained to consider the spin of the Earth and making their calculations for accurate firing. Yeah, if you look for the vain mention of Coriolis effect in any military artillery or sniper instruction manual, you will not find one.
Well,
In all of the
snipers
wars
don't.
fought throughout
Well, hold
history,
on. Let me talk about that for a second because I've done some research on this. Snipers don't really fire too far enough to really take into account. The average sniper doesn't. Now they do have people that are specialty snipers, and if they're firing at long distances, they will take that into account. Now, as far as the artillery goes, this is a historical fact that people. Well, first off, when Simon Dan brought up a good point that I was unaware of that I looked up, I believe it was in World War I or maybe the beginning of World War II where we actually got artillery long enough that was affected by the Coriolis. We're talking about you things that are shot at about 50 miles away that you'll see significant adjustments being made then. But things that are fired 1 mile away, you're not going to see too much of an adjustment, especially when it comes to artillery. Now, when the thing that I researched, the historical event that I researched was the actual battles off the Falkland Islands, where the people who were already aware of the Coriolis effect and the measurements made that needed to be made, the ones from the European side, when they began firing on the German ships, they didn't realize at that point that the Coriolis would actually be affected opposite in the southern hemisphere. Which, if it was a flat Earth that was spinning like a plate, it would be affected the same way. It would both be affected, towards the away from the spin, or towards the spin, right? Like, so if you're firing in the north and you're firing from the equator, it's going to deflect in the east. Well, when you're firing in the south, you have to be firing south for it to deflect east. So if you're firing in the north, it deflects west. So their calculations were right based on their latitude, but they didn't take into account that they were flipping to the other side of the hemisphere, and that their adjustments were going to be the correct adjustment, but in the wrong direction.
If
And
in the
if I
real
could
world,
just interject 1 sec, Hop Hippie, you did say that none of the manuals take into account spin of the Earth, but there is military manuals that actually mention specifically the rotation of the Earth, and that has to be taken into account. Sniper manuals don't go into anything over, say, a kilometer range, so they wouldn't take anything like the spin of the Earth into account. If you would like me to show you, because I've got one ready, I could show you the military manual where it says, so that you won't make that mistake again of saying that no manuals do it.
that's fine.
Do you want me to show it to you?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Let me
All right,
know when
team?
you're ready, and I'll put you up. Are you ready?
Yeah, all right.
Okay. Give me
2
one
secs.
second.
You just carry on right now. I'll get that up.
Now, these observations that are being made, based on the spin of the Earth. These calculations that are being made, not the observations, I'm sorry, the observations are being made because they happened. The calculations were being made based on a spinning Earth. All right, go ahead. Fight the fire.
Okay, right. I'm ready. So this is the Field Artillery Manual, Cannon Gunnery, FM 640, used by the Marine Corps. Last publication of this one was April 1996, and when you go down, and it's a section that says other factors that need to be taken into account. Deviations from standard conditions, deviation effects. Some of the deviations from the standard conditions affecting deflections are drift, crosswind, rotation of the Earth. Okay? So there it is in the
Okay,
military manual saying that you have to take that into account.
Okay, well, then I was wrong.
Cool. All right, no worries. Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Carry on.
Go
team.
ahead and go to your next point. I'll just address that. Unless you have anything else you want to talk about as far as rotation, gyroscopes, Coriolis, or anything like that.
Well, I wanted to keep on since we're talking about airplanes, and Coriolis and gyros. Let's keep it on airplanes. If the Earth were a globe, airliners would not be able to fly on a flat and level path. Any pilot will tell you this. Once the plane gets to cruising altitude, the pilot levels off and flies in a straight and level path. Indeed, the pilot uses the horizon to ensure that the plane is flying level. When visibility is poor, the pilot will use the instruments and fly level heading using an artificial horizon. Either way, at all times, plane flies level. Once the pilot reaches cruising altitude, if the Earth were a globe, the pilot would have to constantly adjust the heading for a plane and dip its nose down to keep a constant altitude. However, the Earth is in fact flat, so if the pilot dipped the nose of the plane down to adjust for the supposed curvature of the Earth, he would find that he's losing altitude. If the pilot kept on that downward trajectory, the plane would crash into the Earth. The fact that no such downward adjustment is made by pilots for supposed curvature of the Earth is proof that the Earth is flat. Eric
But
Dubay
Hip-Hop
even
Hippie,
explains this.
I just explained that to you, and every pilot out there will agree with me that there are constant adjustments being made, constant adjustments, and once you have a balance of gravitational pull down. I mean, there's four real forces we have to fight in there. There is the drag, the thrust, the lift, and the gravitational pull. Whatever you want to call it. Well, downward force, downward fall, gravity, however you want to call it. We can disagree what it is later, but we're going to name that as one of the things that an airplane has to fight in order to stay adrift, or aloft. So one of the things is when if you have a constant, if you know how fast you're falling constantly, all you have to do is just apply that much thrust up constantly as well, and you'll stay at the same elevation because you're going to be falling at the same amount that you're going to be lifting at. It's the same. It cancels each other out. We're falling at 9.8 meters per second. We're lifting at 9.8 meters per second. And I'm not saying that's what it equates to. It's actually a lot more because you have to take into the account drag and thrust. I mean, yeah, drag and thrust as well. So it's much more complicated than that. But literally, it's not impossible for a computer or a pilot to maintain something that's very close to flying perfectly level at all times, but it's not 100% perfectly level the whole time. There are minor corrections that are always being made.
If the Earth were a sphere, airplane pilots would have to constantly correct their altitudes downwards so as not to fly straight off into outer space. If the Earth were truly a sphere 25,000 miles in circumference, curvating 8 inches per mile squared, a pilot wishing to simply maintain their altitude at a typical cruising speed of 500 miles per hour would have to constantly dip their nose downwards to descend 2,777 feet over a half mile every minute.
But gravity
Otherwise,
makes
without
things.
compensation,
But when you throw a baseball, it falls to the ground. Even no matter if you throw it harder, it goes further, right? So basically, what you're saying is that no matter how much forward thrust you have, you can throw it up in the air, and guess what? It's still going to come back down to the ground. And this is because there's something, whether it's gravity or the downward force or whatever you want to call it, that's pulling that plane down. So if it's curved, guess what? It's pulling it down just as much as it's going forward, just like when you throw a baseball. If you throw that baseball hard enough, that baseball will go all the way around the earth and come back and hit you in the head.
okay. Otherwise, without compensation, in 1 hour's time, the pilot would find themselves 166,666 feet, 31.5 meters higher than expected. A plane flying at a typical 35,000 feet, wishing to maintain that altitude at an upper rim of the so-called troposphere, in 1 hour would find themselves over 200,000 feet high into the mesosphere.
Hey, can I
With
stop
a
you there and
steadily
ask you a
raising
question?
trajectory,
Can I stop you there and ask you a question? You said if a plane flew off and it kept flying without adjusting its nose, it would be how far away after how long?
um,
I mean, how
hold
far
on.
in elevation? You said like 166,000 feet or something like that.
Without compensation, in 1 hour's time, the pilot would find themselves 166,666 feet,
Okay.
31.5 miles
So
higher than expected.
that's like saying if you decided you were going to throw a ball straight forward, it would continue on just always and forever and never come back down to the ground. See, that's not
Well,
taking into account any kind of force that's pulling that plane back towards the ground. Which everything else you see in
well,
life has a force pulling it back to the ground, but your example, you're not really using any forces pulling it to the ground. You're just saying, hey, it's just going to fly straight off and nothing's pulling it to the ground. But that's not what we say, though, is it? We say there's a force pulling everything to the ground, just like we see in reality.
well, plane has wings, so it's actually creating lift, and it's not, you know. But also, the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, assumes a flat Earth when training pilots and air traffic controllers using a target generation facility. The target generation facility consists of several software programs that control simulation scenarios using simulated aircraft. The TGF computer simulator derives almost all of the air traffic control laboratories for the FAA William J. Hughes Technical Center. The
Okay,
FAA states,
can I stop you there? The TGF assumes, like you said, it assumes a flat Earth. It assumes a stationary Earth. Just like when you're driving in your car, you assume a stationary interior. You don't assume that your seat's also moving at 60 miles per hour. You would never try to set anything down on top of it. You know it's moving
well,
at 60
they
miles per
still,
hour, but you can't assume that. If you had no windows, you wouldn't know how fast it was moving. So the assumption that it's
well,
stationary is a proper assumption due to Newton's first law of motion, I believe it is, or third law of motion, or
okay,
first, I don't
well,
know, one of those.
the FAA states our lab has worked closely with the TGF group to have aircraft perform the way air traffic controllers would expect them to behave in the real national airspace system. The simulated aircraft in TGF are quite realistic representations of their real life counterparts. The software used in the TGF must be accurate in order to properly train pilots and air traffic controllers on the behavior of aircraft in flight. The assumption of a flat Earth can be seen in a publication from the FAA, the Engineering Analysis and Design of the Aircraft Dynamics Model for the FAA Target Generation Facility. The FAA publication explains that the software that is used by the TGF is accurately simulate to the behavior of the aircraft over the Earth. Specifically, this document discusses the detailed engineering design and software implementation of the Aircraft Dynamics Model, ADM, suitable for incorporation in the FAA TGF simulations.
Yeah, okay, so I understand how the TGF works. Again, I agree with you 100% that it assumes a flat and stationary Earth. The FAA does that because it understands that conservation of momentum is a thing. So if you don't agree with conservation of momentum, then that's an argument against physics, not against FAA, because everywhere else we see a conservation of momentum, including when you're in an airplane and you flip a quarter up and it comes back in your hand as if you're not moving. It does that because it conserves momentum. When you do that, you on the interior of the airplane, you assume that's not moving either, that it's stationary. So you're not really you're not really giving me an argument to combat here that's other than saying that you're not taking into account that there's a conservation of momentum.
Well, I'm just stating that the FAA says that they assume that the Earth is flat and stationary. Also,
And I just explained
the actual
why, though.
the FAA publication, it actually it states the observant reader will notice that the aircraft equations of motion were calculated assuming a flat Earth, and that we are here to assume the development frame was the northeast down frame. This implies necessarily that the Earth's rotation and the variation of gravity vector position over the Earth were ignored in developing the aircraft equations of motion. This simplification limits our mathematical model to the flight of aircraft only. The model will not properly handle the flight of suborbital craft, spacecraft such as the International Ballistic Missile satellites or the Space Shuttle. The model is adequate for all vehicles traveling under Mach 3. And notice
Which
that
is
the
fine.
FAA document
Everything you said right there, I completely agree with. That's fine that you can do that with the current model of the current heliocentric model. You're not violating anything because you're just basically telling us, okay. So the gravitational thing. Let's start with that. So if you took into the equation, you would have to account for gravity, the gravitational acceleration in every one of your equations, or you can just say it's present in every one of our equations. Let's go ahead and take it out for simplicity purposes. Let's not act as if this is something that is going to adjust as we fly over, let's say, a mountain range. We're not going to get some completely different gravitational anomaly that happens. It's because over the Earth, gravity is pretty consistent. So we don't need to really take that into account.
Well,
Like go ahead.
Well, but notice how the FAA document both assumes a flat Earth and ignores the rotation of the Earth and gravity. The FAA maintains that the computer model assumes a stationary flat Earth and at the same time remains precise and accurate regarding the flight of aircraft. The only way that a stationary flat Earth can be the basis for a model and that model still be accurate is as if the Earth is in fact flat and stationary. That means that the ignored gravity and rotating globular Earth do not affect the accuracy of the model because they do not in fact exist in reality.
No, they don't affect the model because it's consistent through reality. But let me ask you this, okay? If it was a flat Earth, well, let me ask you this. If it was a flat Earth, why does it not work at speeds greater than Mach 3 or in anything that's anything in the ballistic missile or low Earth orbit? Why does it not work for those three things, and it only works for things that are moving relatively at the same speed as the atmosphere?
Because those are all things that we can actually like demonstrate and actually falsify.
No, we have planes that fly
as it mentioned, it said such as spacecraft, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and satellites, or the space shuttle. So it's talking about places where it's talking about things that go to places that we don't believe exist. So it doesn't. I mean, you guys want a flat Earth model.
How can you say that how can you say that intercontinental ballistic missiles don't exist?
I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying
Well, then why
that
doesn't the model
space
that the then
doesn't.
why doesn't the TGF account why is the TGF not accurate for things that go that are like ballistic missiles? Why is it not accurate for a
Because they
ballistic missile?
because they don't fucking they
Because
don't do
ballistic missiles
what they
aren't
say that they do.
but
They don't go
yes.
at those speeds.
Are you saying that Mach 3 planes don't exist? Because
Um,
they would have to be consistent if your model was correct, if the
what would be
flat
a
Earth
Mach
was
3?
correct.
What would
Hold
be a
on,
Mach 3 aircraft?
hold on. Let me see what the fastest one is. All right, the North American X-15 is currently set the record at Mach 6.7. So I can guarantee you that those pilots that are flying at Mach 6.7, they're not taking into account a flat and stationary Earth. They're on a whole different coordinate system, a whole different frame of reference.
And what's that coordinate system?
It's going to be their coordinate system, their frame of reference. The same way that
NASA?
we all... No, 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 no. Okay, so they're not going to fly based on a flat Earth is what it's saying. What you're just repeating to me, okay, is that the TGF uses
Well,
this for all things that are pretty much local and of relatively the same speed, okay? Once you get they're saying above Mach 3, that's when you're approaching speeds that need its own reference frame. You can no longer use the Earth as a stationary reference frame. That's all it's saying. Now, if the Earth is stationary, then you should be able to use it as a reference frame no matter what. Doesn't matter how fast you're flying.
well, the the provision in the last sentence of the computer model does not address spacecraft or satellites as a meaning because it's a meaningless subterfuge. The statement that the model is adequate for all vehicles traveling under Mach 3 is also meaningless since it does not specify that it would be inaccurate for vehicles traveling over Mach 3. The entire purpose of the TGF simulation is to create as a real simulation of actual aircraft flight over the Earth as if possible. The only way to do that is to simulate what is real. That is why the TGF software assumes a flat Earth. The TGF is designed to have the high fidelity to reality. The FAA
You
publication
literally just
states.
said, but hold on, you literally just said the TGF only works under certain circumstances. There are circumstances out there that are feasible, like planes that go faster than Mach 3 and intercontinental ballistic missiles that would not work, would not accurately be, would be, accurate if it used the TGF model of a flat and stationary Earth. That's what you're saying here. If it was a flat and stationary Earth and we could use this as evidence, then there shouldn't be any reason for us to say,
But it's
well, it's evidence for everything that's relatively slow. But once you start moving fast, then you can't really assume that the Earth is flat and stationary anymore.
but it's used to train flight. It's used to train pilots. It's used to train uh fuck. Who are those fucking people that sit in the tower? I fucking forgot. I can't think of it right now. I'm having a brain fart.
Air traffic controllers.
Flight. Yes, thank you. Air traffic controllers. Um,
Yeah. Um, can I ask what
the
is it you're
the
reading
FAA
from?
publication also, huh?
What is it that you're reading
I'm
from?
reading.
Is it like
Um,
an Eric Debay website or something?
no, I'm reading. No, man, I'm reading from
Because
FAA publication.
because like,
I'm reading from the
what it kind of feels like
engineering
is that
analysis and design.
team. Okay, what it feels like is team will bring up a very valid point about why it is the way it is, and you will just kind of skim over that and bring up another point that mentions flat Earth rather than actually addressing the points that team's making.
Well, I'm
And it
actually
really just
bringing
feels
up like
like you're
experts.
reading some kind of script.
Well, I'm reading off the FAA engineering analysis design of the aircraft dynamics model for the FAA target generation facility, the TGF.
No, and I can agree with all that, but what Fight the Flat Earth is trying to say is that when you say that this is the way things are, and then you say, well, there's these exceptions to it, though. These exceptions are speeds of above 3, Mach 3, and also intercontinental ballistic missiles. I'm not even going to bring up the space stuff right now. We'll leave all that out for right now, okay? We'll just talk about the things that we know exist, like intercontinental ballistic missiles and planes that go above Mach 3. Once you get those two categories, your model, or the flat Earth model, I'm not going to say your model, but the flat Earth model is not applicable. The TGF, the argument for using a TGF as a proof for a flat Earth then goes out the window. I mean, it could still be flat. Let's say it is flat. Well, the TGF falls off it's not there. You can't use it at above Mach 3 or when you're dealing with intercontinental ballistic missiles. So therefore, the TGF shouldn't be used at all if you can find situations that it shouldn't be used, whether the Earth is flat or not.
Well, from the FAA publication, it says currently the aircraft dynamics incorporated in the TGF are based on the first principles of physics and aeronautics.
Oh,
The models provide the performance
that's perfect.
characteristics
That's
needed to
perfect.
support high fidelity simulations. The TCF incorporation
Hold on.
incorporates fuel burn
Hip
models
hop,
and
hip hop, stop.
I don't want you to go too far
let
past
team
this.
address that point.
Listen, I don't want you to go too far past that point because it'll get lost. I'll let you go back and start over from where I started cutting you off. But when you said it was based on the first or the basic laws of physics or the first laws of physics, and then on top of that, it was the aerodynamics. Is that correct?
It's based on the first principles of physics and
Okay.
aeronautics.
Okay, physics was developed by Newton, so we can go ahead and assume that when they're talking about it's based on the most basic levels of physics, they're talking about the laws of motion. Number one, an object in motion will stay in motion or at rest until something else acts upon it. That's conservation of momentum right there. So that's what they're talking about. When a plane takes off, it carries with it the speed of the Earth. If we're talking about at the equator that's moving at 1,000 miles per hour, it takes off, it's flying at 1,000 miles per hour. Whatever its ground speed is, like let's say it's flying at 200 miles per hour, to a stationary coordinate system, it would be flying at 1,200 miles per hour because it's flying 200 miles per hour faster than the rotation of the Earth. So that's why they're saying you don't have to take into account rotation of the Earth because you're conserving that momentum. Now, once you get up to Mach 3 or you start getting into intercontinental ballistic missiles, and ballistic is because it's not powered, once it reaches a certain height that just turns off its power and lets gravity take care, then it has to take things into account like the Coriolis effect and other aspects of the way that our Earth is shaped and the way it rotates in space. Now, go ahead. You can address that or go back to where I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, like if your model is right, if your globe is true, then yeah, all that you're saying is true. But I'm gonna go back to the FAA publication. So after physics and aeronautics, the models provide the performance characteristics needed to support high fidelity simulations. The TGF incorporates fuel burn models, environmental weather effects. Additionally, the model aircraft are representative of commercial air traffic in the U.S. national airspace, the NAS. As future simulations are developed or brought to the technical center, higher fidelity will be required to identify NAS operational safety and performance issues. The TGF is prepared to increase its fidelity and operation connectivity required to meet the demands by the other FAA programs and simulators. The goal of this project has been to develop and maintain a high fidelity simulation capability to meet needs of the FAA in operating, testing, evaluating the NAS. The reality to which the TGF software is faithful is that the Earth is stationary and flat. If the TGF simulator based its model on the false premise of a globular spinning Earth, it would create a safety issue for all aircraft. The FAA simply had to assume a flat Earth because that is reality. If the FAA had to assume a spinning
Can
spherical
I
Earth
stop you
model,
there for a
the
second?
pilots and air traffic controllers would be
Can I
trained
stop you right there?
improperly and create a messy and embarrassing result of planes crashing with regularity.
Okay, can I stop you right there? So some of the terminology you used there suggests that you're not reading that from the FAA website. Like when you're like, if they base this on the false globular shape Earth spinning model, then it would fail on it. So if you're not reading from the FAA, then you're reading from something that's completely
Well,
biased
no,
towards the
that's
flat
my
Earth.
opinion. That's my opinion.
Okay,
I just
okay.
didn't close the quote.
Okay, well, I didn't know if it kind of sounded like you were still reading there. Again, you're right 100% if you say that conservation of momentum is not a thing. Every time you talk about something that shouldn't be there, shouldn't be happening, all I have to do is bring up that you're not even taking into account the basic physics principles. And these basic physics principles came straight out of the document that you just quoted. It says it
Okay,
relies on
well,
these principles, and you're saying that they don't exist.
NASA themselves even talk about a flat and stationary Earth. The U.S.
Do they
government
talk about
implicitly acknowledged the
do they
reality.
talk about a flat and stationary Earth, or do they talk about assuming a flat and stationary Earth? Because if they're talking about assuming a flat and stationary Earth, then again, they're just basically saying that they accept the basic principles of physics, that things in motion stay in motion.
Okay, well, this comes out of NASA's 1988 publication, number 1207, titled Derivation and Definition of a Linear Aircraft Model. It states that generally accepted linear aircraft model is based upon, quote, a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth, unquote.
Okay, same exact principles that we've been talking about, the same thing that the FAA uses. They're going to assume that it's a rigid body. Okay, so in other words, they're not going to assume any length contraction whatsoever. That's what that's basically saying, is when they say they're going to make an assumption that it's not moving fast enough so that relativistic effects take over. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is that when it says that they're going to assume that it's over a flat and non-rotating Earth, the exact same thing applies that applied with the FAA is going to apply with NASA, because the basic principles of physics are not going to change. Once that plane is in motion, it carries with it, once anything is in motion, it carries with it its original velocity. Okay? So when rockets, for instance, when rockets have to take off, they have to take off, they have to take into account the initial velocity that the Earth was rotating with, that they were rotating with on the surface of the Earth, especially once they get up into the sky where there's no Earth to continue pushing them in that direction.
Okay. Well, that's when the gyro comes in. The instrument is an attitude indicator, which is also known as the artificial horizon. The artificial horizon instrument has a display that shows the pilot, the altitude, or the attitude of the plane, and the actual horizon. Even if you cannot see the horizon because it's obscured by inclement weather or darkness, the pilot can determine the role of the aircraft, which is if he's flying level, and the pitch of the aircraft, and that's if the nose of the aircraft is pointed below or above the horizon. The altitude indicator works by means of spinning gyroscope mounted on a gimbal. Gyroscope, as you said earlier, has two important properties: rigidity in space and precession. All practical applications of gyroscopes are based on these two properties. Precession means that the gyro will resist in any force that attempts to change its plane of rotation. Force applied to the gyro will result in movement of the gyro, but not the direction of the applied force. The gyro will instead move
Hey,
at right angles to the direction of the applied force.
Hold on.
The rate of precession is in direct
team,
proportion
I've got
to the applied force.
hip hop.
Can we agree with that?
Team,
Oh,
I've got a
go ahead.
video queued up that explains.
Well, hold
I've
on.
got a video queued up that explains what gyros are used on planes and what it measures. If you want me to play
Okay.
that for him.
I do. We could play it in a second, but Hip Hop Hippie, did you get done saying what you needed to say? We'll let him get to that point first, and when he gets to a stopping point, we'll address his points. I just want to make sure he was at a
We
stopping
can
point.
agree. Well, can we agree on those two important properties,
Yeah,
rigidity in
sure.
space
Yeah,
and
sure.
precession?
Yep, I absolutely will. And
Okay.
before we get to fight the flat Earth, I'd like to point out that that inside of a gyroscopic assembly are what's called pendulous vanes that take all this into account. For when that gyroscope starts getting too far out of focus or out of alignment, it helps it readjust itself so that it's always oriented towards the center of the Earth. Is that what you were going to play? Fight the flat Earth?
No, I was gonna play him Bob's observation of the fiber optic gyroscope that's used on planes.
Okay, I was talking more on mechanical gyroscopes, but you can play the fiber optic one if you'd like.
'Cause that's what's used on planes nowadays.
Yeah, that's what's used now, but I was just addressing the actual his argument. All right, you're being shared.
Okay.
If the Earth is spinning at one rotation every 24 hours, that means that every hour it has to turn 15 degrees. And if the gyroscope is mounted anywhere on Earth, it's going to drift. In today's 21st century navigation systems, they're using what's called a ring laser gyroscope. It is extremely precise. If we could simply get one of these ring laser gyroscopes, we would be able to prove once and for all that there is no rotation to the Earth. One of the people in the community actually purchased one for $20,000. But what we found is when we turned on that gyroscope, we found that we were picking up a drift, a 15-degree-per-hour drift.
Yeah, and that's what's used in all the planes that fly now, modern aircraft. They actually have three on them: one to measure pitch, one to measure yaw, and one to measure roll. And they work because they measure the rotation of the Earth. That they are within that reference frame, and that's what they base everything on, and that's why they're so accurate, and that's why they're used.
Well, what's so? How's that scientific proof? I mean, what's the observed natural phenomenon?
That is the observed natural phenomenon. The observed natural
What?
phenomenon is that light holds its rigidity in space.
So
if you get a drift, if you
the
move
drift.
the, yes, go ahead.
So the drift is the natural phenomenon. It's not natural though. It's not a natural phenomenon. You're just observing the drift of the gyro. You're not observing
No,
the,
if you
the
were
spin of the Earth.
if it was flat, you would not have a drift. This is your whole argument. This was your argument about the mechanical gyro, is that it's supposed to hold its rigidity in space. So the fiber
Yeah.
optic gyro holds its rigidity in space as well. So there shouldn't be a drift of 15 degrees per hour if the Earth is not rotating, or something else is
And
not
see,
causing the drift.
so
If I
so are
could
you
just
saying
interject
that
one sec. Just to clarify what Team was saying, in the actual manual for these gyroscopes, it defines it as being fixed to the distant masses of the universe. That's what it maintains its rigidity based on. And that comes from the manuals of these fiber optic gyros.
isn't that exactly what Bob said? He said like it's actually the heavens that affects the drift. Is that what?
I mean,
Well,
he
no.
said that.
Is,
That's his ad hoc
Yeah,
explanation,
but
sure, but
the
he
manual
can't
is
prove that.
the opposite. The manual is saying that it maintains its rigidity based on the distant masses of the universe. That's why it can measure a drift of the rotation of the planet
That's
based
also why
on
it's more
the
accurate than
rigidity. And
that's also why it's more accurate than a mechanical gyroscope, which is what they used to use, which is why they had stuff like pendulous vanes in them. We don't need the pendulous vanes inside of these fiber optic gyros because they can track the way these gyros process because of how precise they actually are.
so are you saying that it's showing that the Earth is rotating? Is that what you're saying that the gyro
It's
demonstrates?
showing a 15-degree hour per drift, which matches which matches up with what we say would be the drift you should expect to see over an hour.
Because what Bob said so. I mean, that's just what he said.
No,
He
no,
didn't
no,
really
no,
show.
no. Bob didn't say so. These are actual things that are used inside of the naval ships, the naval GPS ships, or I'm sorry, not ships, the naval GPS tracking systems, and how they coordinate themselves across the ocean. It's also used in your, I believe it. Well, they have some in some cell phones. I believe they have fiber optic gyros in there, but they also have accelerometers in there as well. Then they also have fiber optic gyros are in airplanes now, and all modern aviation has a fiber optic gyro in it because of how precise it is and how little it relies on mechanical operation. In fact, it doesn't rely
So
on
you
mechanical operation.
so you're saying all planes have the ring laser gyro or the optical gyro?
Modern
Because I
aviation
think you.
does, yes.
So none of these planes have just regular mechanical gyroscopes.
Well, I'm sure there's still older planes that are still mounted with them because right now they don't really. You're not really using a gyroscope to get from one airport to the next. You use radar for that. So I'm sure there's still older airplanes that still have older gyroscopes in them, but modern aviation uses fiber optic gyroscopes. Much more precise,
Okay.
no mechanical operation.
Okay,
Can I
but
ask you a question, Hop Hippie?
yeah.
If that gyroscope that Bob and the community managed to get hold of had shown that there wasn't any drift to the planet, would you have accepted that result, that it showed that the Earth wasn't rotating? Or would you
Um,
be as skeptical and dismissive as you are now?
uh, I don't know. I don't really think it's proof either way, honestly. If it's like attached to the Earth, I don't like. I'm not talking about the gyro attached to the Earth. I'm talking a mechanical gyro on an airplane. Because if the gyro on the Earth that Bob Nodal says detects rotation or whatever he says the heavens, but you guys think it's the Earth's rotation, that would mean that it would spin under airplanes and helicopters as well. So and it doesn't. So
Again, you're not
it's
taking into account conservation of momentum, the basic principles of physics that you already
well
referenced
you're
in the FAA manual. If you have an Earth that is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour and a helicopter lifts up off of that Earth, it too is going to have 1,000 mile per hour velocity with it, initial velocity. So if it stays 0 miles per hour over the top, guess what? It's still moving at 15 degrees per hour, which is still 1,000 miles per hour, which means it conserved
so
its momentum.
well you so you're saying that the Earth and airplanes and helicopters are in the same reference frame?
Yeah,
Yes.
you
Because if
could
you're saying
consider
that,
that. Yes.
well, if you're saying that, then that pretty much debunks Coriolis effect because Coriolis is
No,
actual
no,
like
no,
two
no.
different reference frames.
No, 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 no. That's not how that works. Okay. So you have one reference frame that's at the equator. You have another reference frame that's north of the equator. Okay. From either reference frame, if you watch a ballistic thing go from, if you aim one, let's say they're directly north, okay, along the same line of longitude, and you aim directly north, when you fire that directly north, what's going to happen is you're going to see it drift east. Now, one of two things have happened. Either there's some unexpected force, and we call these fictitious forces, and they are a result of accelerating, of changing your inertial frame of reference. Okay? So if you really, at this point, you have you have the guy watching from the equator watching it drift east. You got a guy watching it from north of the equator watching it drift east. And both of them can agree that something is going on. That something is a fictitious force. I don't know how else better to explain it to you other than that.
So are you saying there is two reference frames then?
I mean, you can look at it as two different reference frames. You can look at it at a reference frame along the entire one reference frame all the way up along the line of longitude. At each point, there's a different reference frame there. There's the reference frame of the ballistic projectile that's traveling through the Earth. The thing is that once it goes ballistic, it's no longer inertial. It's never inertial because it's always on a spinning thing. It's always spinning. The Earth is. So anytime you shoot something, it carries the momentum, all right? And that when you're looking at it from it's really hard to explain, okay? From when you're looking at it, you would sit there and say Newton's laws of motion have been violated. Would you agree that if somebody shot something from the equator at you and it drifted east with nothing else touching it, you would say something's not right, correct?
Well, not if I uh
No, well,
not if I thought I lived on a sphere.
no, 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 don't
That's
ignore the rotation of the Earth now. I'm going to help you get to the how we go from an observation to determining rotation of the Earth. Okay, so let's say that you're at the equator and I'm north of the equator. Okay, and you have this magic ball that you can shoot, and it's a ballistic ball, but it's going to make it all the way to me. So when you shoot that ball to me, you and I both notice that it goes to the east. It never goes directly to me, okay? So we have to agree on one thing, one of two principles we have to agree on at this point. Either Newton's laws of motion are not relevant because we just noticed something that was fired directly at me that should have gotten to me, but it didn't. It was deflected. So it didn't travel in the straight line without a force being applied to it. That's the first observation we can make. The second observation we can make is say, okay, Newton's
we
laws of
don't
motion do apply and something is pushing it, okay? But we look up, we don't see
we
anything
don't
pushing it whatsoever. So we have to
we
go ahead.
sorry, we don't observe that though.
Yes, we
Because
do. This is
if
what a hurricane
no we
is.
don't
This is what
because then
causes hurricanes to rotate.
we would yeah, but see we would also see that in planes. Like planes, it would affect planes as well, but it doesn't.
Planes aren't ballistic. Planes are powered. Powered flight
doesn't
and
matter.
ballistic
It's
flight
still,
are completely different. No,
it doesn't matter.
you're right. The
It's still
force
in
is
that second
applied.
reference frame.
You're right. The force is applied, but because it's powered, okay, it can account for that force. It can adjust. The plane makes minor corrections the whole time. You're not talking about when you fly north 1 mile, you're thrown off 300 or 400 yards to the east. You're talking about a slight deflection, and that slight deflection can be overcome with the with powered flight and minor corrections by the automated air flight system or by a pilot, either one.
Okay, well, let's get back to the gyroscope on the airplane. So the spinning gyroscope and the attitude indicator stays fixed and rigid in space. The gimbal and
But
the
do you?
attitude indicator instrument allows for the aircraft to move in relation to the fixed axes
But
X,
Hip
Y,
Hop
and
Hippie,
Z
are
of
you
the
are you
spinning
going to,
gyroscope.
if you're going to bring up mechanical gyroscopes in airplanes, are you at least going to acknowledge the fact that pendulous vanes are there to to adjust for the rigidity and
Um,
space of the gyroscope? Because they're there. You can't
well,
just use one portion of that module in an airplane without taking into account the other portion that corrects for what you're saying.
well, I mean, they may exist within the actual system, but I don't think they actually adjust the gyroscope or anything like that.
Well, that's where
Because
you need
the
to go. You
gyroscope
need to go
that
and
would
do
pretty
a.
much, well,
Well,
the
you
whole
just need to go
purpose of
do.
the gyroscope is to have that fixed rigidity in space
Right, but the
and
pendulous vanes are
precession.
put
It's
in
not
there.
meant to correct itself, because
But
that
the
would like
pendulous
negate the whole
vanes,
fact of the
no, the
gyroscope.
pendulous vanes are in there to correct for the center of gravity, not it and not holding its rigidity in space. You just need to go watch a video on. I think Wolfie has a good video on what the pendulous vanes are inside of the what the actual operational function of the pendulous vanes inside a mechanical gyroscope are, and he's the airplane pilot, so he would know better than me.
Okay. Well, the spinning gyroscope, and the attitude indicator stays fixed and rigid in space. The gimbal and the attitude indicator instrument allows for the aircraft to move in relation to the fixed axes X, Y, and Z of the spinning gyroscope. Thus, a pilot can see by looking at the attitude indicator instrument the exact attitude of his plane in relation to the horizon. Hold on.
Yeah, that's
The
that's
problem with the
immediate though.
spirit.
That's at any one point in time. Okay. The pendulous vanes are
Okay, well, the
constantly
problem.
making corrections as well. That's what you're not taking the whole picture into account. If you're not coming to the plate with the whole
We'll
picture,
see,
then you're gonna lose. You're gonna fail out every time.
but
You need to know what a
that
pendulous vane
negates
is
the
and what
whole.
it's. It
Okay,
doesn't. It
it's
doesn't.
just keeping its rigidity in space. That's all it's helping it do. It's just helping it keep its rigidity. It's not so it doesn't get screwed up. But the problem with the spherical Earth model is that a plane with an attitude indicator showing a straight and level flight will cause the plane to fly off into the upper atmosphere as the
No,
curve
it
of the
wouldn't.
globe falls away from the aircraft.
No, it wouldn't.
The
Go
only
research
way
pendulous
that a
vanes. Go
pilot on an
research the
aircraft can
pendulous
fly
vanes.
straight, the only
Hip
way
hop
a
hippie.
pilot
You
can
have
fly,
listen, you can't
the only
say
way,
mechanical gyroscopes will do this on a plane and then not take into account that they have pendulous vanes inside of them. Go research what a
what
pendulous
I'm
vane is,
saying is
how
the
it
only way
works,
the
and why it
gyro,
negates your argument. Yeah, but it negates your argument. It negates your argument.
I'm,
And until you accept the fact that
no,
they're there and can argue why they're there for another reason, it's going to continuously negate your argument.
no,
Let's just move on to the
what
next.
I'm saying is what I'm saying the gyroscope only works because it's on a flat and stationary Earth. Um, Hold on one second. Um,
But that's what I'm saying. It's not because they're listen. They have
yeah,
pendulous vanes
see,
inside the module. Okay, they take into
no,
account
even,
exactly what you're saying is wrong with it. They deal with that. Okay, so just go research that and come back and we'll talk about that after you've done research and accept the fact that pendulous vanes are inside of a mechanical gyroscope module inside of an airplane.
okay. Well, however, the mythical on-the-fly adjustment to the gyroscope is impossible, as such an adjustment would render the gyroscope useless. Recall that fundamental property of a gyroscope is that it maintains its rigidity in space. The fundamental property of the gyroscope, rigidity, can be so easily altered. That
Okay,
means the rigidity is not
there
truly a
there
fundamental property of a
Okay,
gyroscope.
so no. So there's another problem that you're having here. What you're talking about, okay, when you're talking about what a gyroscope is actually used for on an airplane, is when they're making like quick corrections. Let's say you were going and you had this drop, right? You immediately dropped your nose level down. That's what the gyroscope is going to help you register right there. The pendulous vanes are basically a way of keeping you understanding, keeping your altimeter, I guess. I don't know if it's an altimeter, but whatever it is that keeps you level, that reading. That's what the pendulous vanes just help the gyroscope know which way is down. That's it. Now the gyroscope, to get that reading that you're talking about like a quick adjustment on level or altitude or attitude or
Well,
anything like
you're the
that.
one. No, you're the one talking about the adjustment. I'm not.
No, the pendulous vanes, I'm telling you that what the pendulous vanes are there for, they help the gyroscope maintain its rigidity straight down, okay? Or not
Yeah,
the
but
rigidity.
yeah, but
It changes the local down, because the gyroscope's down is going to drift over time. Just like you said, I agree with you on that. Starts out at one direction. This
yeah,
is
but
what the fiber optic gyro does it too. As you go over the curve of the Earth, you're going to start to get a slight drift. The pendulous vanes,
no, but
when they every so often they readjust that. Every time they start to notice that it's out of alignment, they readjust it so that it's maintaining its level to the surface of the Earth. Doesn't mean flat. Flat and level don't mean the same thing.
an adjustment to the fundamental characteristics of the rigidity of space of the gyroscope, if it were possible, would defeat the whole reason to use a gyroscope in the first place. It would make no sense to
No,
use
no,
an
no, no, no,
instrument
no.
with a gimbal
No,
gyroscope.
because
Wait,
if you
listen.
let's but
It
no,
would make no
you're
sense to
wrong.
use an instrument with a gimbal gyroscope that would require an additional feature to neutralize the primary property of the gyroscope rigidity. The supposed neutralizing feature of the instrument would need to detect precise curvature of the supposed ball Earth and maintain a true course over its surface.
Well, you can
If it
say
could
it all
not
you
do all
want,
of
but you're
that, why
wrong.
add the complication of a gimbal gyroscope? An
Because they
attitude
don't
indicator with
listen,
gimbal
because they
gyroscope
don't
would
want
only be a
people.
hindrance.
Listen, the reason why they have it is so that people don't make like a faulty correction inside of a storm, and they can't determine where the ground is from the sky because they're surrounded by clouds at a low level altitude. They'll need to know that, and that's what the gyroscope, that's what you're talking about, that's keeping you flying level and straight to the surface. That's what the primary function is of that. Now, the curve, what we're talking about, is very subtle. It doesn't just happen immediately. It's not that fast. Okay? So that's why they have
It
pendulous
is when
vanes
you're
to make.
flying that fast.
I mean, you could say that all you want,
It
but
would
it
be.
still takes 70. You still have to go 70 miles for only 1 degree of curvature.
And okay, an attitude indicator with a gimbal gyroscope would actually be a hindrance on the ball Earth. Rigidity in space is exactly
Okay,
opposite
do
of what is
you
called for an
okay, hold
attitude
on.
indicator
You
in
just keep
spherical Earth.
listen, it sounds like you're just reading from stuff. Let's not have this reading thing because you're
Well,
reading, but I'm answering your question and then you keep reading as if I haven't answered your question. I can continuously answer
well,
your question
I'm,
over and over and over again, but to me it
yeah,
seems like
but
you don't
see,
even understand what my answers are telling you.
well,
Right, and guys,
I
stop
feel
one
like you're
sec,
not.
stop, both of you, stop, guys, stop. Like, team is kind of right, and it's what I was saying earlier. It feels very much like you are just reading from, basically an Eric Dubay How to Flat Earth or something, and you really aren't. Team is literally addressing every point that you bring up. Then you're just going, yeah, but, and carrying on reading the script. You're not really having a back and forth about anything, and it literally is just team answering question after question. And
Well, no,
And
like
I'm
because
okay with that.
you
I'm
are,
okay with that. But
he just said it wouldn't be noticeable because the Earth is so big, but it at a cruising speed of 500 miles per hour, you would have to constantly dip their nose downwards and descend 2,777 feet
you would change
over
one
half a
degree every
mile. That's
10
every
minutes.
minute.
Or
That's
no, 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 no,
every
no, no.
minute.
Hold
That's
on. Don't.
You're
You're
feet
doing the
over the
math
mile
wrong. You're
every
doing the
minute.
math wrong,
No,
okay? You're doing the math wrong.
it's with your curvature math
No.
though.
Listen,
It's with the
listen. You
curvature
right,
just
right.
math.
said
Hip, hip,
Yes.
700
hip hop,
miles
hippie.
per
Right,
hour,
guys,
okay?
guys, you're talking
Listen.
over each other. Right,
Okay.
let team explain the math from his side, and then you
There
can try and say if it's wrong or not. Okay.
okay. 1 degree of of latitude over the Earth, okay? I think it's latitude. What 1 degree of latitude over the Earth, all right? If you divide the Earth up into 360 degrees, the circle, 1 degree of that 360 degrees, I believe, is 69 miles. So if you're traveling 700 miles, that means you're going 1 degree every 6 minutes. You're covering 1 degree of that circle every 6 minutes. That's all you're doing. You're not traveling so fast that you have to dip down 5 to 10 degrees every 1 minute just to maintain your level to the surface of the Earth. That's not what we're saying. The Earth is 25,000 miles in circumference.
Yes, if the Earth were truly a sphere, 25,000 miles in circumference, curving 8 inches per mile squared, the pilot wishing to simply maintain their altitude at a typical cruising speed of 500 miles per hour would have to constantly dip their nose downwards and descend 2,777 feet over a half mile every
We're
minute.
talking about the drift on a
Otherwise,
gyroscope. We're talking about the drift on a gyroscope. We're not talking about the curvature of the Earth, the 8 inches
no,
per
but
mile squared.
you
just said
said
we were talking
you
about
said
the
that you
gyroscope.
said that
The
we wouldn't notice
gyroscope
it
would
at
drift
all.
the gyroscope would drift 1 degree in every
How is
6
1
minutes.
degree? No,
That's a
do you
subtle
have a
change.
citation for this? Do you have a
Yes,
citation?
the circumference of the Earth is 25,000 miles. Okay, that means 69 miles per degree. Hold on, I can do the math real quick. I'm pulling that one off of memory, but I'm pretty sure that
I
I'm
can
right.
confirm the math is correct.
Okay, so it's
Yeah, you're traveling
69
500 miles per
degree.
hour.
Okay, that's even worse. If you're traveling at 500 miles per hour, you're lengthening the time of 1 degree of drift.
No,
You might as well
no,
stick with
it's dude.
700 just so I can just make it 700 so it's easy. It's 1 degree every 6
The
minutes.
sky,
That's what the
but in
pendulous
your
main
model,
addresses.
the sky wraps with the Earth. It would be 2,777 feet every minute.
Uh-huh.
That's how far it would have to fly. That's how far it would have to descend, dude.
It's not descending. That's a straw man.
It would
There is
have
no.
to. It doesn't.
No,
Yeah,
that's
it
not
doesn't descend
descending.
because it's
That's
flat.
not
There is
what
no curve.
descending means. Descending means going lower in elevation. It's not descending. All right? It's
It,
flying straight and it's being pulled
it
down.
would
It's
have to
flying
descend.
slightly up and it's being pulled down by gravity. And there's other factors involved, including thrust and drag, that play a role in both. Okay? These are
No,
what you brought
FAA
up. You
doesn't.
brought
No,
these
they
up.
don't even
You
train.
said,
They
hold
don't
on, you
even
brought
train
these up
pilots
already.
to account for
but
gravity.
in your citation, listen, Hip Hop Hippie, in your citation, you brought up the fact that the FAA takes into account the basic laws of physics and the aerodynamics. Was that the two that it said? Was basic laws of physics and aerodynamics? It's exactly what I'm telling you right now.
Okay, but it also said that it said that, but then it also goes and says that the Earth is flat and stationary,
No, it says
and they actually
assume.
train
It says
pilots with their
assume.
system.
No, it says
Well,
assume the Earth is just like you
why
can
would they? Why
assume.
would they train? Why would they train on a assumed flat and stationary Earth if it's a
Would
globe?
you
That would be
assume?
Right. Okay.
Let me
counterproductive.
Right.
ask you.
Stop. Right. This question's been done for 30 minutes just on its own already. Team has explained that they assume a flat and stationary Earth because, for all intents and purposes, it is flat and stationary because they are going the same speed as the rotating Earth. So they don't have to take any difference into account. So yes, they will assume a flat and stationary Earth because that is effectively what they are flying over until they reach higher speeds, as Team has already explained, like Mach 3 and above, and intercontinental ballistic missiles and stuff, because they go a lot faster. But this question has been done, and you're just asking the same question again. So please, let's not go there again.
What question did I ask?
It wasn't really the question.
You're-
Consistently
the-
saying that they assume the flat and stationary Earth. We agree. They do assume that, just like you assume that the inside of your car is stationary. You don't flip a coin.
That's what I'm saying.
If
Like,
you're
why would
driving at
you?
100 miles per
No,
hour,
I
let me
don't.
ask you a question. If you're driving at 10 miles per hour, do you assume that the car is moving any slower than when it's driving at 60 miles per hour and you're flipping a coin up and you want to catch it? Do you have to sit there and say, I got to remember to take that 50 extra miles per hour into account so that I don't flip the coin up and it doesn't land back in my hand? No, it doesn't. You
Well, I know.
assume
I
that it's
know.
stationary because it's all moving at the same speed.
No,
Same
I
concepts
don't. No, I
apply.
don't because I know. No, I don't because I know I'm driving the car. It's a vehicle. It drives the Earth. You assume that it's moving.
No, hip hop
You
hippie. You
don't
could
need. You
listen.
don't.
You could
Yes,
no. You no no no
I
no. This
know
is
that the car
incorrect.
is
You
moving.
could
I
be
see it.
no.
I
You
drive it.
no.
I'm the one driving it. I
All right,
know
all
I'm
right,
moving.
let team
No.
respond.
Stop. That's wrong.
Hip,
Okay.
let team respond.
Let me tell you why that's wrong. Because all you got to do is paint those windows black, and you have no idea how fast you're going. Bottom fucking line. You would not know how fast you were going if you. What experiment could you design with blacked out windows to tell me 100% how fast you're going? I can answer the question. You can't come up with one. It's because you're in an inertial frame of reference. That means all
But I would
physics
still
that
know
you
that I'm
do.
moving.
No, you wouldn't. Not without,
Yeah, I would. No,
not without putting something. No, you wouldn't. Not without putting something on the
Well,
ground
if you were going at a
and feeling
constant velocity.
vibrations. No, you would not. You would be. This is Newton's laws of motions. These are basic laws of motions. You've already cited the article that explains that all this falls under the basic principles of physics.
I would
Right,
know I'm
right.
moving, dude.
Let me
It's
think.
like
Right. Hip hop hippie. Right. Let me. Hypothetical situation. Okay. You wake up and you're in a room that you don't. Feels like it's not moving at all. Okay. But you're actually on a train going about 700 miles an hour, and if there's no windows on that train, you wouldn't know because there's trains in Japan that use magnetic levitation and are able to go so fast with no friction at all that if you woke up on that train and you had no windows, you would not know you were moving in the slightest. So,
okay.
if the same in a car, if there is no vibrations and you're going 60 miles an hour at a constant velocity and your windows are blacked out, you're going to have no idea that you're going at 60 miles an hour. If you sped up or slowed down, you're going to notice that because you
Well,
notice a change in velocity. But if you were on a
well,
perfectly, really completely flat, runway and going at a constant speed with blacked out windows, you wouldn't know you were moving.
well, is the Earth a vehicle with blacked out windows? I mean,
It doesn't. You're
you
he's
guys are just
saying that the
assuming that it's
concepts. No,
spinning.
these are
Like
concepts of
you guys are
physics.
just
These are
saying that it's
concepts.
spinning. Like there's no
Hip hop
proof that
hippie.
it's spinning.
These are concepts in physics we're talking about. Okay, we're not talking about rotation of the Earth right now. We're trying to explain to you what the conservation of momentum is. We're trying to explain to you what the basic laws of motion are. Okay, these are concepts that you've already cited. Now,
Yeah, but
when you're
you're trying
drinking,
to involve like blacked out windows and stuff. Like it just
because we're trying to
doesn't compute
explain to
with me. I
you,
mean,
you're right, it shouldn't compute to you, okay? It shouldn't compute to you because you're not completely letting yourself, you're not getting rid of all your ideas that you're having and looking at it from just a
but
purely hypothetical, theoretical situation. If you were in a blacked out box, how could you tell me how fast you were going?
but I don't
You
know.
can't. You
Like
can't.
I don't
But you
know.
could tell me if you were
No.
accelerating or not, yes? Could you tell me if you were accelerating or not?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, well then there's your answer right there. Is it safe to
Okay.
assume at all times when you're traveling at a consistent speed that you can make an assumption that everything around you is not moving?
Well, I I guess I could, but also is can it be at rest and stay at rest? I mean, I don't.
What?
Why is it so crazy
That's
to
a
think that it's stationary? Like I don't like in our model,
Because it
it's
doesn't
perfect. Like we're not
because
moving at all. Like
it doesn't match other portions of observational reality we have, like the 15-degree
but if it's
drift on the gyroscope. How do you explain that? Nobody can explain
it's
that
just a
without. Okay, go ahead.
but it's not a natural phenomenon. Like the Earth is stationary, and then you put a gyroscope on it, and then you're like, oh, I see a 15-degree drift.
Because
That
that's
must
what we
mean the Earth
should
is
see.
spinning. I mean,
No, but it's
you're
only
going off
evidence
of
to
okay.
the
Right.
support.
Uh,
But it's only
can
evidence
you
to
can you
support.
explain to us, Hip Hop Hippie? Could you explain to us the operation of a fiber optic gyroscope?
I'm not too familiar with it. I think it has something to do with the Sagnac effect. Um,
Okay.
and
And
how
what's the
like
Sagnac
I think
effect?
just like lasers shoot off um has something to do with like harnessing light and
Right.
No,
I'm not
it's
100% sure.
basically an interferometer, and what it does is it measures light the light comes together at a point, right? And so if it was not moving, those 2 points would never be out of phase. So as you
Yeah,
begin to
but
drift, that point begins to drift of where they're
Can
in
you
phase
share
at.
my screen?
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Hey, and everybody that's doing super chats, we will do them at the end. Just letting you guys know. I know there's been a few. All right, 1 second, Craig. All right, there you go.
Right. So if you look at the one that says still on it, okay, the light being emitted from the top is going around and then meeting back in the middle at the same time, because that light has had to travel the same path. But on one on the right, we're going to assume that the whole gyroscope is also moving to the right, which means that the light on the right actually takes less time than the light on the left to travel the same distance, and that creates an interference pattern at the bottom, which is what the gyroscope registers and uses to measure the rotation. So if it was still, then you wouldn't get an interference pattern of the light. But because it's moving, the light, it's taking different amount of time to travel the same distance. So when it meets back in the middle, it creates an interference pattern. So that's a very basic explanation of the Sagnac effect and how a fiber optic gyroscope would measure the rotation.
okay. Well,
Uh,
I mean, you assume you assume it measures the rotation, but I don't think it's proof of anything.
Well,
I mean,
why
the
do you think it
phenomenon is
drifts?
actually conjured within the apparatus, so it
No,
just
no, no,
doesn't
no, it's
really
not. No, it's
mean it's
not.
proof for me.
We use
It
this for
doesn't make it scientific
navigation.
proof for
We
me.
use it for navigation on the ships on ships at sea. So
and
it's
planes in
not
the sky.
something, yeah, and planes in the sky. I always like to bring up the ships in the sea, but yes, planes in the sky as well. If this was not an accurate way of navigating, if it was just conjured inside of the apparatus, they would not be able to use it to accurately navigate from place to place.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, this brings up a good point. Do you want to talk about how they navigated the stars?
No,
And I'm gonna.
before we get that, because you asked for proof of rotation, and I did have another one I want you to explain. We'll get to yours in a second, because it does have to do with
Okay.
stars as well. Why is there a southern rotation point in the sky if the Earth is flat? That shouldn't happen
Um.
anywhere. It should all be traveling along the horizon in a big, sweeping line that goes all the way around, as per perspective.
Well, I know, like there's supposedly this rotation, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, evidence for a globe.
Yeah, well, there's
I
no
never
other
said
way.
that it wasn't evidence for a globe,
Okay,
but
but no.
I
I'm
don't know if
asking you.
it's I don't know if it's 100% proof. I don't know. If,
Well, give me a second. It is evidence for a three-dimensional object that spins around an axis of rotation. That is evidence of that. That's how we get that. If it was any other shape, you would not see two singular rotation points in the sky that happen to appear from the equator exactly 180 degrees from each other, as if they're in straight lines with the North Poles and the South Poles, which is how we do navigation. But go ahead and answer that.
well, I've heard like not everybody in the south or southern hemisphere supposed can actually see the southern star like we all can in the northern hemisphere supposedly.
I'm sure that has to do with the
So I
fact
don't
that
know.
Sigma Octantis is not as close to the southern rotational point as Polaris. I've never looked into that claim, but I'm sure that Sigma Octantis is a significant amount further distance away from the southern rotational point than Polaris is from the northern rotation point.
Yeah, see,
Everybody can see the rotation point though.
I don't really use the sky to prove like the land that we stand on or anything like that. Like I don't look up at the sun and take
But
measurements
how
off of
can
it
you
and be like,
not?
oh, I live on a
These are
globe.
the two, the sun, moon, and the stars are the three most prominent things we can see every day. Every single day they're
Well,
up there. Well, yeah, and those should be your basis of observation. If you're going to just use observation alone, try to explain the three phenomenons of the sun, the moon, and the stars. When you can explain all three of those phenomena on a flat Earth, I will seriously consider being a flat earther. But until then, there's no chance because those three phenomenons cannot be explained other than a circular Earth, a globular Earth that's spinning and rotating around the sun?
Well, Polaris pretty much proves that the heliocentric model is pure fantasy.
Explain.
Polaris is the North Star. It's fixed above
Wait,
the North
what?
Pole of the Earth. The North.
Let him explain it first. Go ahead, hip hop hippie.
I
I'm
said.
sorry, yeah, that just
I
hurt my
said
brain when I heard
Polaris proves.
that.
I'm sorry. I said Polaris proves that the heliocentric model is pure fantasy. Polaris, the North Star, is fixed above the North Pole of the Earth. The North Star does not move. It has never moved from its fixed position over the North Pole since the day of creation. The North Star is alleged by modern scientists to be 433.8 light years away from the Earth. That means that a person would have to travel at the speed of light for 433.8 years, or yeah, the speed of light for 433.8 years before reaching the North Star. Light travels at approximately 186,282 miles per second,
Okay.
which is over
So
670 million miles per hour.
can we stop there and can I address some of those points? Do you know what a nautical almanac is?
Um,
You should research
is it
a
something like
nautical almanac. Yeah, it's very important to your flat Earth argument because it shows that Polaris and other stars change over time. So that's number one. Number two, if you were to take two pennies and put them on a frisbee, okay, and throw the frisbee as fast as you want and in any direction that you want, how far away will those two pennies ever get from each other if they never leave the surface of that frisbee?
oops,
So
sorry,
you
could you
can,
say that again?
if you were to attach two pennies to a frisbee and throw the frisbee as fast as you want and in any direction that you want, will the distance between those two pennies ever change?
Um, Fuck,
The
I'm
the
trying to
answer is
picture in my
no.
head.
No, it'll
Yeah,
never
okay,
change because
cool.
they're
No,
attached to the frisbee. So we in the
oh, okay, yeah,
galaxy
no.
are basically pennies attached to a frisbee. The frisbee's moving. The pennies on there, they're all rotating pretty much together at the same angular speed, the same pretty much all together. We do have drift, which you can see with a nautical almanac. We do have drift in the stars, but the drift is subtle. We shouldn't expect to see the two pennies. Even if those two pennies were sliding ever so slightly apart as you threw them, they would still pretty much be the same distance from each other and traveling in the same direction and at the same speed. So they would drift apart from each other, yes, but they would still, if you looked at it, if you truly plotted it across, a three-dimensional coordinate system, you would come back and say, no, those pennies never left each other's side because they were always moving together, even though they did probably have a little bit of minor sliding or whatnot. Same thing happens in our galaxy. This is why North Pole doesn't, or Polaris doesn't really drift too much over time. It's above the North Pole
But,
primarily, and it's moving in approximately the same direction and speed as we are.
well, that's assumed, but scientists, like, how did they come up with that? They just made it up.
It's what
There's
they
no
observe in
evidence to
other
support the
galaxies. It's
distance.
what they observe in other
Well,
galaxies.
there's no evidence to support that distance, and all those distances in the heliocentric model were simply
Well, I'm pretty sure
hypothesized
they use
to explain why
parallax.
all the
I'm pretty
stars
sure
move
they
in
use
unison.
parallax. They use parallax to determine the distance to to Polaris.
So, so parallax is the movement of one star in relation to another star that would be expected to be seen if the Earth were spinning and orbiting in space around the sun, right?
Well, it's how the positions of the stars change relative to each other from two different measuring points. So you take one measurement point on one side of the sun, 6 months later you take it on the other side of the sun, and then you can use the parallax between two stars to determine using trigonometry. Let's say you know the distance to one star, you can then use trigonometry to
Well,
determine the distance to the other star.
well, what we observe is no parallax whatsoever, with the exception of a few wandering stars, which are today called planets,
But
and
that's not true.
the
Well, hold on.
stars.
You got to go look up the nautical almanac because it goes back for years and years and years, and it's tracked star formations and movements for years. And there's plenty of ancient Greek star charts out there as well that show differences in the different alignments of like the Big Dipper and whatnot. I would need to know. I wish I would have saved that that file that somebody shared with me that had the ancient Greek star charts that showed the difference in today's star charts versus the ancient Greek star charts, and it definitely showed movement of stars or
Well, the
positions of
stars
stars.
do move in unison. They do move in unison around Polaris, and it's
Are the
as they
stars
are
free moving
part of
or are
one
they
great.
attached? Are the stars free
Well,
moving
it
or are they
looks
attached
like
to
they're
something?
attached. I don't know. I mean,
But that's what we're trying.
well,
That's what I'm
I don't
trying to
know.
say. A nautical almanac is something that's tracked the
I
position
don't.
of stars over time. So you can go back 50
Okay.
years and see how the stars have changed from 50 years ago to today.
Well, there is no
That would imply
parallax, so
that
I
would
don't
imply
know.
that they are not attached. No, there is parallax, but that would imply that they're not attached to each other.
Well, I don't think there is parallax. So, and that's a
But you're
problem for
not
the
thinking, you're
heliocentric
not
model.
thinking, no, no, that's a problem for you accepting the heliocentric model because you just say, well, there is no parallax. That's just what you're saying. You're not
Well,
giving
no,
me proof or anything that there is no
you
parallax.
think there's parallax. Well, you think there's parallax because we're in a expanding universe, and
No, there's parallax because we
that's
took measurements from two different places on an
but
orbit and with
they
with
even
the same two stars, and we saw how their position relative to each other changed.
but even astronomers say like the parallax is imperceivable to us on Earth. Um, the
I
problem
would
with the
need a
argument is that
citation for
there, no
that.
matter how
Do you
far
have a
away the stars
citation for
are,
that?
well, do you have citation that they say that parallax is actually perceivable?
Perceivable. That would be, yeah. I mean, you can easily go out there and look at, you can do parallax with yourself. So yes, parallax itself is perceivable. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna look
Well,
up.
well, it would be discernible if the Earth were moving, but there is no parallax because they're
Okay, so
they
yes,
might
there is a,
they
hold on.
are stuck in something.
Polaris
They might
was
be stuck in
measured.
something.
Polaris was measured using parallax. So yes, parallax is a thing. Yes, astronomy uses it to
It doesn't
measure
move
the
though.
distance to stars. That's just you saying that.
It
I'm
doesn't
telling you
move.
that there's a nautical almanac.
No,
Well,
it's
how did
always
the
been it's always been our North Star though. Always.
No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. And there's hold on,
For me and you, it has.
that's
It hasn't
fine for
moved at
me and you,
all.
but the Earth has been around a lot longer than you and I have.
Yeah, well, it's always for as long as history goes back. It's freaking it's been the North Star.
No, that's as long as your history goes back. But I'm telling you, there are things that are older than you out there, like nautical almanacs, Greek star charts, ancient Chinese star charts. All these other people that took measurements way before you and I and our
Yeah,
grandparents were here, they made these measurements. Okay, and if we can take those
yeah.
measurements and compare them to today, we see that the skies have changed. So your argument
Well,
is incorrect at best.
that's
Hold
what
on
they
1 second.
say has happened, but we don't. For us, the North Pole star has always been Polaris. So,
No, it hasn't always been Polaris. It's been always been Polaris for you and I, but it's not always been
what, like
Polaris. You just keep saying
36,000
that,
years
but
ago? It doesn't
no,
even. It
that's how
yeah, but
that's how long it takes for
it
Polaris to
doesn't
come back
change. So,
around. No,
it,
that's how long it takes for Polaris to come back around, 360 degrees back to being in the same position it is today. And I would need to check that too. I'm just saying that that large amount of time that you're quoting, I don't know, it might be 26,000 years actually, but the time that takes is the time it takes to go all the way around and come back and be the North Star again. The North Star has changed. Hold on, I'm pulling up the list of North Stars. These are all stuff that you can look up yourself.
well, it just says like yeah, it used to not be our pole star, but it's always been there, and it doesn't
But
even move,
no,
dude. It's always there. It never moves
listen.
out of its spot.
You're just saying that these nautical almanacs don't exist, but they do, and they show different positions of all these stars that you're talking about. All you have to do is go do a little bit of research. These things were written 50 years ago. They didn't know you and I were going to be talking about it today. They didn't know that the stars were going to be up here today and said, 50 years from now, we need to confuse the shit out of people. So let's just draw the stars in a different spot. And let's also remember to tell the guys that 1 year from this year to draw the stars in a different spot that's, so that the people 50 years from now can disagree or
Yeah,
can
but
say, Go ahead.
Polaris, it's dude, it's never moved, bro. Was it the North Pole Star 50 years ago? Yeah, it was.
Was it the
I
North Pole
mean,
Star
it's
5,000 years ago? No, it wasn't.
well, how are we supposed to know? We weren't alive 5,000 years ago.
Yeah. Hold on. I know this one. It's Thuban. Hold on.
Well, that's a belief. That's a
Nope, nope,
dogma
nope,
that we
nope,
have
nope,
to
nope, 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 nope.
patch.
Okay, here it
Yeah.
is right here. Hold, look. Thuban is a former pole star, and guess what? The Pyramid of Giza was built around it being the pole star. Are you going to deny that? Or did they build the Pyramid
I
of
thought it was
Giza
built.
5,000 years ago just to fool us today?
Well, I've heard stories that it was built to align with Orion's belt, but I
I'm
mean, three
literally,
pyramids, three stars. So
the Pyramid of Giza. Hold on, let me go find that. All right, from earthsky.org. Thuban was the pole star some 5,000 years ago when the Egyptians built the pyramids. Let's see.
um,
I'm trying
we
to
can
find it
also
on
talk
the.
about how stars can't be in space because space can't exist. You can't have air pressure you can't have air pressure in a vacuum.
Okay, the air shafts that are inside of the
Oh,
pyramids
I've got
align to
something queued
where.
up for that team if you need it.
You got what?
I've got something queued up for that if you need it.
Okay, I was about to say, yeah, I just looked at it. It was one of the air shafts that were aligned, that lined up to where Thuban was pointing at the North Star 5,000 years ago. And I
Yeah,
have
5,000 years ago,
5,000 years ago. Yeah, they didn't even
supposedly.
know we were going to be arguing about the flat Earth now. How would they be a part of the
Supposedly,
conspiracy?
I mean, I don't even think they really know how they built the pyramids either. So I
Oh my,
mean, it's
well,
all just
that's
hearsay
regardless of the shape of the Earth. The fact
for
that
sure.
this shaft points it directly to where the star would be 5,000 years ago, where we predict it to be, and it's pointing at what they called the North Star. All right, go. You said
Okay.
you have something, fight the flat Earth. I'll
Oh
just leave
no,
that
just
for.
if you need it, what we were talking about earlier, if he's going to talk about gas pressure and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you can't have gas pressure in a vacuum. I mean, it's
Okay, so you
impossible
you want to go away from the
because it's a
observations
vacuum.
and get
That's the
to
whole purpose of
science?
it being a
I'm okay with
vacuum.
that. I'm okay with that. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah. A change of pace sounds good.
all right,
Yeah,
so yeah, you want to
yeah.
pull up. What do you have? Do you have that video of the sulfur hexafluoride?
No, no, no. The thing we were talking about earlier that you would just ask me when you needed it.
I'm not. Oh, yeah. No. Okay. So we'll talk about the gas pressure next to a vacuum. Do you know what sulfur hexafluoride is?
Uh, no.
Okay. And do you understand what vacuum pressure is?
Yes.
Okay. So vacuum pressure is basically a pressure differential, right? And that causes the pressure from a higher system to flow into the pressure of a lower system in a closed system, for instance. You agree with that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So, how do you explain sulfur hexafluoride and the atmosphere sitting right next to each other, two completely different pressures sitting right next to each other without mixing? No container.
Oh, well, no, I'm not talking about a container. I'm talking about can you show gas pressure in a vacuum?
I mean, that's ridiculous to ask that because the simple putting gas pressure in a vacuum it would want to expand out. Okay, if you had nothing else to
Well, yeah,
holding it down. Look, hold on. There's huge misconception that you guys try to do here. It's a big time misunderstanding of what's actually going on, or a great attempt at either straw manning or being intellectually dishonest. So let me start by saying that in a vacuum chamber, you don't have other particles of air that are mixing with each other. You have voids, and then you have pressure pushing out, pushing against each other, gas particles pushing against each other. Now, if there's nothing in that void, then there's nothing to stop it from filling that void. So it is going to fill that void. Okay, that's just going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if you do this
I agree.
if you do this at a high enough with a big enough vacuum chamber, what you're going to notice is that the molecules at the bottom of that chamber are going to be closer together than the molecules at the top of the chamber. Okay, and then there's a point at which, let's say that the vacuum chamber was all the way up to space. Okay, at the very, very, very top, those particles just would not be able to escape. They don't have enough energy to fight the constant pull of gravity. Now, if there was no gravity, if there was nothing pulling that particle back down, it would just simply go off into space as per your basic principles of physics that you already cited at least once, all right? So, if
But
gravity, go ahead.
how did the air pressure end up in the vacuum in the first place though?
Well, that's why you have to
If
have a
space was
vacuum.
vacuum.
That's why you have to have a vacuum that's so tall so that it has a chance, so that there's an actual gradient of not just
No,
gravity, but there's also enough particles in there to be squished down on top of each other. Now, if there is
no, I
no
mean when the
what here's the thing: if there is no gravity, for instance, you would not have any pressure gradient whatsoever. It would just be all the way up to the top. It would be completely uniform from top to bottom because of the exact same reason that you're saying now. Because gas has this, they bounce off each other and it has a natural tendency to spread out in all directions, unless that's in a closed system with no other forces present. But once you add gravity, you're adding a direction, a direction of force. And when you add that direction of force, that's going to start aligning things. It's going to start trying to pull everything down to that same point. They're still going to be pushing off of each other. They're still going to want to spread out as well, but you're also going to have gravity pulling them down. So at the very, very top, where they don't have a lot of energy, they just can't escape that force of gravity pulling back down on them. And since they can't
but
escape, they then begin to press down on top of the other atmosphere, on top of the other particles, which then press down with even more force and more force and more force, and that's why you get a pressure gradient.
I thought gravity wasn't a force.
Well, it's a force just like the Coriolis force is a force, just like the centrifugal force is a force. It's a force that can be measured inside of our frame of reference, yes.
Yeah, I had
So
a very large conversation with a well-renowned scientist who's, gravity is one of his specializations, and he clarified that gravity can be calculated as a force. It's not a force
yeah,
in the
well,
literal sense of, there is something hitting it. It is a force within a reference frame, and the reference frame is the bending of space-time.
okay, but okay, well, can you still? Well, that's an assumption because I mean that's if the Earth is a globe, then yeah, all that stuff would be real. But um,
So if
that's
it is
why I
a
asked,
globe, if it is
can
a
you show
globe,
gas
it's
pressure
real.
in a vacuum?
Then
Yeah,
I
if it
just
is a globe, then
explained,
all you're
but I
saying
just
is real.
explained how ridiculous that request is, because then okay, you have to have enough
Well, no, because
room,
you're
right?
assuming. Well, no, but you see, you're assuming that the Earth is a globe first, and that's why we can't
Okay,
do that
then
Okay.
demonstration.
then let me ask you this
Right.
question.
Do you
What
want
do
to
you
see
think would
evidence that
happen
the
if
Earth is
you,
a
well,
globe?
hold on 1 second. What do you think would happen if you froze that gas? Not froze, we'll say get right up to freezing point. What do you think would happen? Do you think the gas would be top to bottom of a really, really, really tall vacuum chamber? Do you think it would fill up top to bottom, or do you think that if you slowed down the molecular motion of the molecules, which is temperature, if you drop the temperature and slowed down the molecular motion of those molecules, they would no longer have enough to push up all the way to the top? This is
I
condensation
don't
of
know.
gas using temperature. Okay. The
Well,
thing
if you're
is
saying
that
it's,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No,
No,
I'm
go ahead.
saying that your demonstration, it only works under certain circumstances. If I make the vacuum chamber 60 miles tall, then what you're talking about isn't going to work. You're only talking about in a very local pressurized system that's a closed system that yes, you're going to have the molecules spread out. Make that thing 60 miles tall and it won't be the same thing.
No,
Change the
I'm just
temperature on the
asking if you
inside and
can.
they'll condense down in the bottom. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So are you saying, you can't have air pressure in a vacuum?
I didn't say that. You can't have air pressure in a vacuum. That's like, okay, are you saying, rephrase your question. Are you saying I can't have a contained space of air pressure in a vacuum?
No, I mean, can you have air pressure in a vacuum?
But
Yes,
the,
with,
okay,
with
yeah,
the
okay.
one thing that team's been trying to explain to you that I mean,
Well, then
I could
can
But
you
just
that's
show
why I'm
follow
me?
up
trying to
with
get
you.
you,
Well, can
that's
you
why I'm
show
trying
me
to
a
get you
demonstration?
to, I'm trying to get
Well,
you
can you show me
to
can you show me an experiment of this observed phenomenon?
yeah, but okay, what you're asking for, we would need a, if you're looking for a pressure gradient, is what I think you're saying is, can we find a pressure gradient, or can we find a contained amount of atmosphere next to a vacuum? Okay, but the
No,
thing,
no.
what I keep, go ahead.
I'm asking, can an air pressure exist in a vacuum?
A vacuum pressure exists in a vacuum. If you put
No,
atmosphere
what I'm
into it,
saying,
yes, an
can
atmospheric
you have
pressure would in. If you add atmosphere to it,
so
yes, you'd. If you add atmosphere to it, yes. But if you add atmosphere to it, it's no longer a vacuum. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like you're asking for like a square circle. It doesn't make sense. It
technically
doesn't.
space so technically space can't even be called a vacuum because there's
No, that's not
gas
correct. That's not correct.
in it.
Oh, no, okay.
Why?
That you're right. No, you're right. You're right. Okay. That's why there's no
Yeah,
such
space
thing as a
isn't a
pure
perfect vacuum.
vacuum. Yeah, perfect. I said pure. That's why we don't consider space a perfect vacuum. There is a vacuum pressure that exists in space. Now, as you go up in the atmosphere, you lose atmospheric pressure. Eventually, you get to the point where there's not that much of a pressure differential between the edge of space and the top of the atmosphere. And at that point, the molecules simply they just don't have enough energy. They just cannot escape the pull of gravity. And gravity holds
But
in there.
back
And guess what? He pulls them down on top of the ones below it. And then they pull down on top of the ones below that. And it adds up over time. And that's what we get, a pressure gradient. Without gravity, no pressure gradient.
so
Everything
you're
just goes off
saying
into space.
vacuums so you're saying vacuums do have pressure.
Yes, vacuum pressure.
Vacuum
Research
pressure.
the Casimir effect. Yes, vacuum pressure exists.
Okay. So can you show me gas pressure in a vacuum
Again,
demonstration?
you're
Experiment.
asking me for a square circle. The question makes no sense unless you become a little bit more specific. Do you want to see vacuum around something with, I mean, air pressure around something with vacuum next to it? Are you asking, is it possible to have both atmospheric pressure and vacuum pressure? Because that means, no. That's like saying, is this shape both a circle and a square? No. They're not. It's not both a circle and a square. It's either a circle or a square. You either have vacuum pressure or you have atmospheric pressure.
Right.
They represent the same
Let me.
thing.
I think I can clarify his question. I think, Hip Hop Hippie, are you asking if like we could put a sphere of gas inside a vacuum and it stay like that sphere of gas just on its own? Is that what you're wanting us to
Um
demonstrate?
uh well, I'm thinking you could, but you'd have to have like a glass sphere or something where because I mean if you put something with gas pressure in a vacuum,
And
it's going to want to expand and
and
possibly explode.
and you're trying to compare that to saying, well, then how can we have an atmosphere on our planet in the vacuum of space? Yes, that's where you're going with this. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay.
But
Well,
you're
team,
assuming
share my screen.
but you can't just assume like we're already in a vacuum like because that
Gravity,
just
you
defeats the
fucking
whole purpose.
retard! Gravity! Have you ever?
It's simple. Like this is
No,
what we've been.
that's
Heard of
back to what I
fucking
was saying.
gravity?
Well, well,
Inside of
you just
inside of
assume
an
gravity is
oxygen
real
tank.
though.
No, okay, listen. Inside of an oxygen tank, okay? If you were to take
Hmm.
the air in there, the air's moving. It has a lot of energy. It's pressing off the molecules, not the air. The molecules are pressing off of each other and moving, and this presses against the container, okay? And the container holds
Hmm.
it back. Now the container is made of forces, okay? The container's not solid. It's not. You don't say, "Oh, it's just a container," because if that was the case, we'd just make it out of plastic, right? Because that's all it takes. But no, 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 wait. Plastic can't hold pressurized oxygen. Not at the psi that we're talking about. So why does a plastic balloon break but a steel container doesn't? Well, the plastic balloon is made with weaker forces to hold it together, right? And we can rip plastic apart with our hands, but we struggle to rip steel apart with our hands. All right. So when you're looking at this and you're saying, why isn't the atmosphere just going off? Why with no container? Well, the container is the force of gravity. It is a force that
No,
if you overtake that force, you get past it. If you don't, you don't. You get held to the ground. You and I are evidence of it, of being held to the ground. The ISS is evidence of breaking that force that's holding us down.
no. See, I'm saying atmosphere can't exist in a vacuum. Like,
But why?
unless there
Why
is a
why are
container,
you
there
saying that
has
it
to be.
can't exist? Why are you saying that it can't exist? If I put, let me ask you something. If I go in
Because you
there
can't
and I
demonstrate
hold
it.
on. If I go in there and I slide a plate, right? Let's say I slide let's say it's something, it's not a solid plate. Let's say it's a plate that has little bitty holes in it, okay? If I slide that plate in with a little bit of bitty holes to start the experiment out, and I release the gas from the bottom, is there going to be more pressure on the bottom, or is there going to be more pressure on the top?
I'm sorry.
Or
Can
will
you
it be
can you say
even?
that again?
Well, if I put in gas into a vacuum chamber and I have a divider inside of the vacuum chamber that has little holes in it, okay, and I put all of that pressure in there, I put all the gas in the bottom, and it wants to expand to the top, but it's being held back by the pressure of the grating, okay, so it only has little holes, so portions of it are being held down. Is there going to be more pressure underneath, or is it going to be the same as the top?
I don't know. Do you have
It's
a
going to be more
demonstration?
underneath. It's going to be more. Come on, man. Come on. It's going to be more
Well,
underneath.
I mean,
It'll
can you?
eventually level out.
Well,
It'll eventually level out, but there will be more underneath. And this is because there's now a pressure that's holding down that portion of the atmosphere. Okay? There's more down there than there is above it. Same thing with it's
well, it would.
happening in space. At the top, there's a certain pressure. Outside of that, there's a slightly less pressure. We call it the vacuum of
Well, any
space, but it's not zero. It's slightly above zero.
well, any little hole in that container, the gas would want to fill the space. It would fill the vacuum
It would, yeah,
instantly,
it sure would. Not instant. No, it wouldn't do it instantly. There
and
would be a
and it would
pressure
do
at
it
the
on
bottom.
Earth, and
No, you would
and it would
feel the
do it on
pressure.
Earth.
You would feel an atmospheric pressure pushing against the plate. This is my point. Is you have a pressure that is pushing out in all directions. As long as there's something there that has enough force to keep things from leaving, it will keep things from leaving. That force is the force of gravity. If gravity didn't
Right,
exist, it would just go all the way out. In fact, hip hop hippie, listen to this. If gravity didn't exist, we wouldn't have a pressure gradient. Because everything everywhere, as per what you're talking about right now, would just constantly be pushing in all the same direction. Why do we have a pressure gradient?
because there's a container.
No, that's wrong. You would not find
There's
a
an empty
pressure
suit.
gradient. Hold on. You're not going to find a
That's
pressure gradient inside of an oxygen tank. You're not going to find a pressure gradient inside of a balloon. Why do we have a pressure
but
gradient?
but if you put other gases in a container, they're gonna separate.
No, no. They'll
Yes,
mix. No, there's
yes,
no reason. No, you're wrong. They'll mix.
they
Well,
They'll
would.
become
They no, they would.
homogeneous. Oh,
They
yes, they
would. They
will.
would.
team,
Yes, they will.
I need to correct you on one thing. That you actually would have a
Yeah,
slight pressure gradient
a
in a
very,
tank of
very, very
oxygen,
slight one. Yeah, you're right. I'm
but
wrong about that. You would
it's the
actually have a
same
very,
reason we
very
have
slight.
a yeah, but it's the same reason we have a pressure gradient in our atmosphere, and that is that there is,
Oh,
I'm
you know,
saying
call it
that
what you
without
want.
gravity,
To use
without
Sleeping
gravity.
Warriors' words, that without
so
gravity, there would be no reason for that gradient. That I think that's what Team's getting at. Without gravity, and if the atmosphere was contained, then there would be no reason for us to have a gradient. So
but
either
how
gravity's real, or we're not
or
contained, and gravity's real in that case.
well no,
Otherwise
you
you
guys,
need to give us an explanation for the pressure
if
gradient that we all know is there.
I'll just put it this way, if space is a vacuum, then we would need a container to block it out from the
Okay,
vacuum.
right. Okay, how about this then? Because the fact is that gravity is the container. You can
Well,
say there
it's not a
isn't a container all
container
you
then.
want, but
But it
actually there
is.
is, because
That's what
gravity
I.
is the container.
That's what I just
Well,
explained,
can
Hip
you
Hop
show
Hippie.
can you
A
show gravity?
container. Hold on.
Well,
Listen. A container is forces. Okay. If you blow up a balloon above the amount of force that it can hold, it will pop the balloon. Okay. So it's forces that are holding the balloon together. It's forces that are containing the outward pressure of the atmosphere inside of the balloon. The force we're
I thought
talking about
gravity
that's
wasn't.
holding it down is gravity. You know, you
I
can
thought
say that
gravity
all you
wasn't a
want,
force.
just like centrifugal force isn't a force, but we have centrifuges, don't we?
Well,
Yes or no? Yes or no? Do we have centrifuges?
centrifugal. Yeah,
Go
well,
ahead.
centrifugal
Go ahead.
force is real though.
No, it's not. It's a fake
It's an
force. It's a
apparent force.
fictitious force. No, hip hop hippie. It's a fictitious force.
The
We can
force
cover
that
this right
the
now.
force that
Okay.
spin. What
Yes.
are you talking about? I'm talking about the force that spins things off of it when you spin it. You know, like if
The
it flings
centrifugal
things
force.
off.
Yeah, sure. It's not a real force. It's only
That's a
something
real
you think
force.
is a
You
force.
see
No,
it.
it's not. It's a fictitious force.
I
Well, let me
I
ask you
can
a
test
question.
that though.
No,
I can
oh my
demonstrate
God, thank
centrifugal
you
force.
so much for saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. You can measure it even though it's not a real force. And let me tell you why it's
No,
not a
I
real
can
force.
demonstrate
No,
it.
hold on.
I
No,
can
listen,
I can demonstrate.
hold on. Hear me out. Hear
Hey,
me
Hip
out,
Hop Hippie, let
okay?
him respond.
Hear me out. If you take a quarter and you spin it around your head, let's just assume that you can measure the force on that quarter as you're spinning it around your head, okay? And that's the centrifugal, the force pushing out that wants to take it out, right? You're agreeing with me on that part, right? You can measure that?
Um, I don't know if you can measure that, but you
Well,
can
you just said
see
you
it.
can measure. You said you can measure centrifugal force. Okay,
I
so
said
let's just.
I can demonstrate it. Yeah,
Okay, so measurement,
when you fling
demonstrated, same
something.
thing. That's the same thing. Okay, if you're saying you can demonstrate
Yeah,
something, it
okay.
means you can measure it, predict it, say this is what's going to happen when I do it, and whatnot. Okay, now let
Okay,
me ask you
that's
a
fair.
question. Do you know what force generates the centrifugal force?
Inertia.
Okay, great. Inertia. Okay. You have a centripetal force that is accelerating the quarter around the circle, and then you have an inertial force that wants to continue to go straight. All right? It wants to go straight. It doesn't want to turn. What happens when you turn that, you generate a force in the opposite and equal direction called the centrifugal force. Now, if you were to cut that string, does the quarter go out or does the quarter continue to follow its natural direction, natural path?
What if you're flinging it? If you're
No, if
flinging
you're
it like
spinning
around
it
your head
around
or
your
something?
head, let's say you're spinning it around your head and the rope breaks. Does it go away from you or does it follow in a straight line?
Well, it'll go away from you.
No, it won't. It'll follow in a straight
It,
line.
it will
And
go.
that's, no,
Will follow a
it
straight
will
line
not.
away from you
No, okay,
if you're
you
flinging
can
it
say
around
it.
your
Okay,
head.
okay. Let me rephrase my question. Will it continue on its linear direction, or will it go directly away from you in the direction of the centrifugal force, in the pull of the centrifugal force? It follows its
I don't
linear
know. It'll just
direction. It follows its
yeah,
linear. It
it'll just
doesn't.
yeah, it'll just follow its
Okay, so
path.
let's say, yeah. If you spun it around basically, and it broke off right in front of you, it wouldn't fly out directly in front of you. It would actually fly to your left. Let's say you're spinning it over your head, right to left. Okay, if you cut it right in
Hmm.
front of you, that quarter would go to the left. It wouldn't go straight forward. But if you measure that force isn't to the left. That force is directly away from the centripetal force in exactly the opposite direction. So once you took the centripetal force away, the other force disappeared. Where did it go? Why does it no longer play any effect on that? Well, that's because it's a fictitious force. It never was there. It's only a force that can be measured in the frame of reference of the quarter.
Okay.
So if you want to call gravity a fictitious force or a fake force or say it doesn't really exist, understand what was being said there. Gravity is a fictitious force. Can we measure it in our frame of
Well,
reference? Absolutely. Does it mean that it really exists? No. But we can assume it exists
okay.
and we can measure it as if it exists because it runs our daily lives. It runs all the
Or
planets, the
because you
motion of the planets. But there's something more to
well,
that observation.
you think it does.
Newton saw
Or
it as a relationship between the masses, which it is, and their distance, and a force attracting them. We understand that not to be the case now. We understand gravity to be a fictitious force that exists in our frame of reference that we can measure, we can make daily predictions on, and for all intents and purposes, we should just go ahead and accept the fact that it's a part of our reality, even though it's a
Well,
fictitious
you
force.
need it. Well, you don't really need it. You need it because we're on a ball. We're supposedly on a ball spinning at 1,000 miles an hour.
No,
on
We
a-
you
don't
don't.
even have to have the ball.
Yeah, that's
That's the
the
problem.
Right, hip
that's the
hop.
That's the
Right,
whole
problem.
reason why it was
let me
conceptualized.
hip hop hippie.
That's
Right,
the whole reason why it was conceptualized.
let me ask hip hop hippie. Let me ask you just one question. Can you explain the pressure gradient that's in our atmosphere? Can you give us a reason why there is a pressure gradient?
Because there's density. I mean, density.
That density can't create a pressure gradient.
Well, you can have a density gradient, and that's why you have that's why you have a pressure gradient. It's because of the density.
So does our atmosphere like separate out into different gases of density, or is it one
Hold on.
gas?
That would be
called
the
air that's a
violation. That's a literal violation of what you just said earlier. Okay, you can't say that gas is going to fill a container, that you can't have this vacuum and have all this gas go everywhere, and it's just not going to happen. But then when you want to say that there's a pressure gradient, okay, the gas, all the gases go everywhere. So if there is no gravity, if there is no reason for a pressure gradient, then it doesn't matter about the different densities of the molecules, the different molecular weights of the molecules, okay? All that matters is there's nothing pulling them down uniformly to give them a way to structure themselves by density. So you get a complete mixture through the whole system without gravity. I can pull up a video of this, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you two guys off, but hold on, and I'll pull up the video of that. Go ahead.
Well, I think density explains it perfectly. That's why you can have a pressure gradient in a container. It's because of density.
Okay, give me 1 second. I'm pulling something up. Go ahead. Fight the fighter.
As Team explained earlier, that in a tank of oxygen that just contains oxygen, there's still going to be a very slight pressure gradient. The bottom of that tank, if it's standing upright, is going to have a slightly higher pressure than the top. Why is that? How does density explain that? When it's all the same thing. You know, there's no density differential or whatever. It's all just oxygen pressurized in a container, but there would be a very slight pressure gradient.
Well, that proves that we're in a container. Well, that proves that we're in a container.
No,
if that happens in a
that
container,
and
that's why we have pressure gradient.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Say it proves we're in a container, but you still don't give us the reason why there is a pressure gradient in that container that just contains oxygen and nothing else.
I just told you.
It can't be density. It can't be density because it's all oxygen.
It's all oxygen.
Well, it depends on the pressure too. I mean, it depends on the pressure too. I mean,
you're right. The pressure gradient. That's what we're talking about. And
that's what
creates
we're talking
that pressure
about.
gradient?
Yeah, well, if there's a pressure gradient in the container, it proves that we're in a container, or that you can only have pressure gradients in a container.
You don't understand.
You can't even have pressure without.
Hold on.
You can't even have pressure without.
You're doing stop. You're doing the Nathan Oakley thing of if A then B then B then A. No, you can't just say, well, there's a pressure gradient in there. It shows there can be a pressure gradient there. That is the opposite of what we're asking you. We're asking you why there is a pressure gradient in a can of oxygen, nothing else, just oxygen. Why is there a pressure gradient in there? We can explain it with our model. But on the flat Earth where gravity doesn't exist, why?
Why is there a pressure gradient in a swimming pool? This is something that you've done before, I'm sure, Hip Hop Hippie. You've gone to the bottom of a swimming pool and noticed that you feel higher pressure on your ears. Why is that?
Well,
everything you've quoted so far has said that pressure should be pushing out equally in all directions. So at the top of the water, you should get just as much pressure at the as you have at the bottom of the water. Why then is there a pressure difference? Why is it more pressure at the bottom than there is at the top?
Density.
Oh my God. No, liquids
Oh
are
my gosh.
incompressible. Liquids are incompressible, so you're not. It's not going to be density.
The weight just adds more pressure. I mean, it's just
The
density
weight
and
is
weight.
Weight requires
determined by
gravity.
mass. Yeah, mass times force. Mass times little g.
Weight. Well,
Or
that's just
mass times
a
acceleration, not
calculation.
force. No.
Yeah,
Everything
well,
you've
it's the
quoted
mass
so
times
far.
the
Hold on,
gravitation. Sorry.
Hip Hop Hippie, you quoted the basic principles of physics. This is back to the basic principles of physics we're talking about. You just described one of the basic principles of physics. Weight is mass times acceleration. Weight is a force. It's measured as pounds force, or I think Newton kilograms, right? Is that right? Or is it kilogram force? Or kilogram newtons or
Weight,
something
sorry.
like that?
What's
We call kilograms
in
kilograms, but
newtons or
what is it
kilograms.
actually? Yeah, but the mass is kilograms. What's the actual denomination of the force? I thought it was
Kilograms per
like
newton meter squared.
maybe it's I thought it was like kilogram newtons or kilograms something. But anyway, same thing.
I can't remember.
In America, we weigh ourselves as we say we're 200 pounds, right? Well, 200 pounds means nothing. The truth is we're 200 pounds force. That's what we are. Okay, we take the acceleration, we multiply it by the mass, and that gives us our weight. Weight is a force. That's why when you're in free fall, you're weightless.
Well, okay. But
But still, why
still
is
doesn't
there a pressure
really-
gradient at the bottom of a pool? I've already told you liquids are incompressible, so it's not density. Why is there a pressure gradient at the bottom of a pool?
it's the weight of the water on top of the
That
other
requires
water.
a force.
creating
No, that requires a force.
Yeah. Like,
You're
Just
absolutely
like
right.
mass
Hold on,
weight.
let me tell you something,
You're
Hip Hop
right.
Hippie. You're absolutely right. It is the weight of the water on top of you pushing down on the bottom. But now you need to explain why this happened. In fact, hey, Bob Nodell, not a week and a half ago, has already him and Jeranism got in a huge argument over this because at some point you have to stop saying this force does not exist because it absolutely does. Everything you've said tonight has required a force. Water pressure, gas pressure, or the gradient gas pressure, the gradient and the water pressure, the airplanes taking off and moving, all of these require forces, okay? And you're just denying every last bit of every one of them. You're saying, nope, no forces, but basic principles of physics.
Okay, well,
Do you know what a gravimeter is?
no.
Okay, go watch I'm not even going to try to explain it to you. I'm going to let another flat earther do it for you. Go watch Bob Nodell and Jeranism talk about what a gravimeter is. It's an accelerometer, okay? It's a highly, highly precise accelerometer that measures the difference in gravitational pulls around the Earth, all right? Because it does vary very slightly depending upon land masses and whatnot. Where there's increased amount of dense land, there's a slightly higher gravitational force. When the moon passes over you, you can feel a slight change in the force then too. So all these things right here, he is going into an explanation with Jeranism saying, look, we have to stop saying this force does not exist. Deny its gravity. I'm okay with you doing that. At least we have a starting point from there moving forward. You have to start accepting the fact that something exists. Something is pulling down or pushing down on everything. Go watch the video with Jeranism and Bob Nodell. I swear to you, they argue about this. Because Jeranism's like, how do we know? How do we know? Same argument you're saying. How do we know there wasn't, well, not necessarily yours. You're not being such a denialist as he is. He's like, how do you know that the gravimeters aren't programmed with 9.8 meters per second? And then Bob's like literally having to say, because you can go to this other part of the world and it reads something different. All of these things work on this principle of a downward force. Now, if it's a flat Earth, then that downward force is down in all directions, but it's there.
That's just like the gyroscope. I don't really think it proves anything.
But how does it? Okay, well, how's an accelerometer work then? An accelerometer is a sealed environment. There is no.
Well, I'm just saying the observed phenomenon is within the apparatus.
But that doesn't make any
It's
sense.
just
That's like
it's not
saying
it's not well,
that
it's not
everything you see and everything
it's just not good
you accept
true
is
for me.
all generated within you.
Well, no, it's just not good enough proof for me, I guess, is what I'm
Well,
saying.
okay, that I can understand that, but then you have to come up with an explanation to the phenomenon. Okay, when we have an explanation and you just say I don't believe it, it's not proof. Well, then take
Well,
that one step forward and try to prove what it is. Because this
well
is what, hey, the
honestly,
one thing I'll give Bob Nodell is he's accepting the fact that there is a fucking downward force, and this is undeniable, hip hop hippie. This is undeniable. We have machines out there that
Like, but
only work based on this force.
okay.
Go ahead,
Well,
fight the flat Earth. Go ahead.
Bob Nadell said that it's literally impossible for there to not be some kind of downward force with everything, all the experiments that they've done. As far as Bob Nadell is concerned, there is a downward acceleration. He doesn't accept that it's towards the
so
center of the Earth, but he does
so
accept
okay.
that there is this downward acceleration because no matter what maths you do, there is no way that you could have a mathematical formula for density being the reason why things fall. Density is
It's
literally mass per
impossible.
unit volume. There's nothing. If I think we went through it and we actually figured out that if you were to replace the units of gravity and stuff with density, you would end up figuring out gravity, or at least the acceleration due to density, would be a hertz because of the units you would have to use.
Yeah,
So you're literally
the acceleration would be directly proportional to the mass. So if the mass went up,
yeah.
the acceleration towards the Earth went up. If the mass goes down, the
Well,
acceleration goes down.
so so are you
And
saying
that's not how
gravity is not a
there is no
constant? So
No,
but
no.
you're
We're
pretty
saying that
much
gravity is
like that's like
no,
double
no. We're
speak
saying that
though.
gravity is the only acceptable answer as to why
But
things
if
it
it's
fall, and not only fall but accelerate with that uniform acceleration of 9.8 meters per second
but
squared.
but
And
but,
the
but Team Skeptic just said, sorry to interrupt you, but Team Skeptic just said that it's different on different places of the Earth.
Yeah, but
yeah,
they're
very
based on
slightly,
mass.
very very slightly.
They're based on density of mass. Okay, so let's say you have a
Well,
mountain, right? Let's say, well, hold on, hear me out. The mountain itself doesn't have to be more dense. If the mountain is sitting next to the water, or I'm saying more dense than the rest of the Earth. If the mountain is sitting next to water, well, the water is going to have a less of a gravitational pull on something because it's less massive, and the mountain is going to have a greater pull on it because it's more massive.
yeah, see, if so, you're kind of saying like the exact opposite of what it would do. Like if there was a weight difference, there would be it would be fivefold. It wouldn't be just slight. It would be huge.
No, 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 no.
Like
You got to understand the
No, no,
yes,
gravitational
no, no.
yeah,
constant. The gravitational constant is like 6.7 times 10 to the negative 13, I think. Is that right, or am I off on that?
and
It
so it's
sounds
constant
about
over
right.
the
Yeah.
entire.
Hold on, I'm about to
So
look
it's a
that up.
constant over the entire Earth, right?
No, it's a constant. No, no.
Oh
It's
no.
it's how we relate mass. It's how. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Fight the flat Earth.
I think I think he's asking is the 9.8 meters per second squared constant over the Earth, and the answer to that is no. I think it varies from
10 to
as
the
much as
negative
like
11th. I'm sorry.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think the
well,
difference in the gravitational acceleration varies from like 9.79 to 9.83. There's like that tiny amount of difference, but that actually is explained and can only be explained by the gravitational effects of our planet.
well,
And
that's
there's
kind
a
of
there's a
weird
reason why
because
there's that difference.
yeah, but see, that means that 175. If assuming the theory of gravity that the force of gravity remains constant over the entire surface of the Earth, the 175-pound man at the equator would weigh 700,000 pounds. You travel within 100 feet of
Huh?
the North Pole.
What?
Yes.
What?
No, no.
No,
Where are
right.
you getting
Okay,
these?
so
Hold on. Where are you getting these numbers? How are you coming about these numbers? Because your
Because,
math is way off.
well, it
yeah.
has to do with
See,
the centrifugal force as
Uh huh.
well
Do you
with
know?
the
Do you on a
spin.
one
right. Okay.
Like
kilogram
we would have,
1 kilogram item? Do you know how many newtons is of outward force the centrifugal force generates?
Mm,
0.3.
no.
Yeah, isn't it like
Or
0.02% of
I'm
gravity?
sorry, 0.003. Because it would be 10
Yeah.
newtons. It's 1/3 of 1% of the force of gravity.
We'll see.
And that difference in gravitational acceleration I was talking about, like that's kind of due to the centrifugal acceleration and the fact that you really don't feel any on the poles because you're not rotating very fast. But then at the equator, things will weigh different because there's a slightly different net sum of
Well,
forces because there is slightly more centrifugal force. Although because
yeah,
the amount of centrifugal force is so minuscule compared to gravity, it's only a tiny amount. And that's why different set, if you had a set of weights, right, and you took that set of weights with you and had a 1 kilogram weight, and you weighed that at the North Pole, and then you took those same scales and that same weight to the equator, it would read different because of the different centrifugal acceleration. And that's why
yeah,
scales have to be calibrated based on location. Otherwise, you don't get accurate readings.
well, yeah. Well, what about if you went down there? Would you weigh different?
Yeah,
Yes.
very slightly.
Yeah,
If you
they,
moved
they,
if
they
you went
have
down there?
experiments they've already done with this with the that little gnome that they take around the world and they weigh it at different spots and it weighs different based on latitude. And that weight change is due to the centrifugal force being stronger at the equator and because it's put in one direction versus gravity in the exact opposite direction, it actually just makes you weigh less on a scale because you have one force pulling you in one direction
Yeah,
and gravity pulling you in the other. Hold on,
and
I'm
that's what I
pulling it
meant
up.
by
I'm pulling up
the
one of
net
my older
sum of
videos.
forces.
Gravity, but see,
Yeah, you
gravity
explained it
is
very well in one of your
necessary
videos.
on your model. But see, gravity is necessary on your model. Like
Gra-
we don't need it on the flat
well,
Earth.
yeah,
It
Okay.
all it is density.
well, you do because you still can't explain the pressure gradient as we've gone through. So that needs
Okay, so I did I
gravity to
No,
did
happen.
the calculations and here is the difference in the gravitational force at the North Pole or at 89 degrees north. I did it at 89 degrees north, not the exact North Pole, versus at the equator was 1.003 times greater. That's it. That's the amount of force you're talking about difference. You're talking about something
So
something at the equator weighing 50 kilograms at the North Pole will weigh 50.17 kilograms. That's it. 170
and that is
grams.
due to the fact that there is less centrifugal acceleration at the North Pole because relative the speed that you're spinning is less than if you were at the
well,
equator. And like I said, this isn't just us putting it out of thin
well,
air. Ask anyone that
well,
trades in gold because this is very important to them. Because they would literally lose money or just randomly make money based on where they took their gold. So that's why scales, wherever you are in the world, they have to be calibrated for where you are. Otherwise, you're not going to get an accurate reading. And that simple fact of scales having to be calibrated at different points in the world proves that we are on a sphere with a gravitational influence.
well, that's what you say. I mean, if they all weigh the same at these different places, then I mean, it's just a
No, they weigh different
convenient,
at different
really.
places.
They have the
Well, no,
same
no, it's a
mass
fact
Just
all
that
the
because
it's
they're
time. They
calibrated,
have the
right?
same mass all the
yeah.
time.
Just
They
because
just
they're
weigh
calibrated.
different at different places, and we can predict this weight based on the latitude.
Yeah. In fact,
But
Simon Dan
it's
is doing
it's
an
all the
experiment.
same.
Simon Dan's doing an experiment. He's going on holiday soon, and what he's doing is he's weighing something where he is, and then he's posting it to where he's going and weighing it there, to show that there is different weights. The same thing will weigh different based on where you are, and that literally cannot be explained with density and buoyancy. Impossible.
Um, well, everything can be explained with density and buoyancy. I mean, how does
Okay,
gravity
right. Explain. Right,
explain
no,
the
stop,
feeling
stop. I'm
of
gonna
Yeah.
have to stop you there. Right, I'm
Yes.
gonna have to stop you there. Please explain to me how density and buoyancy shows a differential in weight between being at the equator and North Pole. Don't go
well,
anywhere else.
you
Please tell
say
me
that?
exactly how
Well, no,
density and
you say
buoyancy
that
explains that.
like well, no, you say that is like it's been proven. Like doesn't
It's
It
been
has.
demonstrably
I don't think
proven,
it's been
yes.
proven. Well,
It's been
Yeah.
I don't
demonstrably
think so.
proven. I mean, you don't have to think
I
so. It's
flew
been
down.
demonstrably
I
Well,
just explained to you. I
I
just
flew
explained
down
to you
to
about the fact that
Australia not
scales
that
have to
long
be.
ago, and I weighed the exact same weight when I went down there. So
Did you hear what? How much? Okay. Would you say that you roughly weigh about 75 kilograms? Or we'll just say 100. We'll just
I'll
say
just
100. We'll round off at 100. That's 220 pounds. I'm not assuming you're that big. You don't sound like you're that big. You sound like you're about my size.
say like
So
I'm like 170.
yeah, okay. So you're about my size. All right. So let's assume that you're 100 kilograms. Okay. So that's putting you way higher, way higher. 220 pounds. Another 50 pounds, right? If you weighed 100 kilograms at the north or at the equator, all right, and you went to the North Pole, this is a bigger difference in weight than what you're talking about now. And you went to the North Pole, you would weigh 100.34 kilograms. That's it.
Yeah,
And
You would
that
put
kind
on
of weight differential,
less than
yeah,
one pound.
that's
A
nothing.
220 pound
and
person
and
at
that
the equator puts on less than one
That can't
pound
even
at
be
the
that.
center.
But see, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, you can take that as like evidence of gravity, but
That's not
me, I'm
gravity.
not.
That's
I,
centrifugal force, or that. Well,
no,
I guess that's centrifugal
yeah,
force and gravity. That's really that's showing you
yeah,
more proof
it's
that
an
the Earth
evidence
is
that we're spinning.
rotating.
Yeah,
well, to
because you
you,
still
it
haven't actually
does.
answered
But
the
to
question
me, it
as
doesn't
to
really
how
prove
density
anything.
and buoyancy can explain that there is a weight differential, and that is something that has been demonstrably proven. And you
It's
saying that, oh well, I didn't weigh that different when I went, yeah, but the human body can put on an immense amount of weight or lose an immense amount of weight in the space of a few hours. So just saying I weighed myself and I didn't notice that less than 1% difference isn't really anything. Whereas we can demonstrably prove that things weigh different based on their latitude, and density and
well,
buoyancy cannot
okay,
explain it at all.
okay.
It's
Well, I'll
100%
just
fact
have
that
to.
cannot be
But
shown.
a spinning Earth does. A spinning Earth allows us to
Yeah,
predict how much this weight change should change, and sure enough, it's exactly what we predict, or it's pretty close to what we predict. You got
Well,
you got different gravitational anomalies and influences. Look into a geoid for anybody out there that's wondering what I'm
right.
talking about. Look into a
Team, can I
geoid.
tell you about another
Yeah,
experiment that I've been working on?
yeah.
Right, so there's a block of flat. There's a block of flats near me, and like the stairwell it's really quite long from the top down to the bottom, and I'm gonna get a pendulum, and hang it all the way down and have it swing for as long as I can, and if I'm right, I could measure the precession and then calculate based on that my distance to the North Pole, right?
You could if you set it up right. Yes.
Okay, so if I did that and then I got the at least close to the measurements that are actual reality, wouldn't that also prove that the Earth is rotating
I mean
100%?
that's evidence to support it. Yes.
So how would you explain that with density and buoyancy, hip hop hippie?
uh,
Well,
well,
I guess
that
what he's
the
saying is
pendulum would
how
have to
would you
do with.
explain Foucault's pendulum to with using density and buoyancy? If we're not rotating and it's flat and everything can be explained
Well,
with density and buoyancy, how do you explain the Foucault pendulum?
well, well, they use motors to start it up. Like you actually have to push it to start it up. Then they have motors
Yeah,
that
I'm not
that's
sure
the
keep
that
the
principle of it.
wire.
that's to
Well, they have
lift it.
motors
Like
I
that
believe
pins
once
the
they let it
wire.
go, gravity takes over.
Yeah, but
well,
see,
it's not
there's
entirely that there is magnets
they also use
to keep
magnets.
the swing going, but it still
Exactly.
allows it to swing in 3D space. So all the like the magnet is doing is keeping it swinging, and then the precession is because it is free to swing in 3D space. Obviously,
Well,
things won't swing in perpetuity forever. To be able to demonstrate that, you have to apply a force to actually get it swinging. But then the fact that it's swinging and processes, based on your latitude. I mean, it's what's the calculation to figure out how far it should go? Isn't it the sine of your latitude?
Uh,
I
I
can't
mean,
remember
I'd
now.
have to look it up, but it's something like that.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
trigonometry function.
Like 40. Yeah, at 45 degrees, I think in 24 hours it would spin 2.5 times. So yes, there
Well,
is.
yeah.
You have to get it going because that's the principle of Foucault pendulum. It's when it's swinging, it shows that there is a rotation underneath it, and to be able to demonstrate that constantly, yeah, they have to
But
have
we
magnets or
already,
whatever to
but
keep that force going.
yeah, but still at the same
Well, that
time,
seems kind of goofy.
the more effective measurement is the one that you brought up earlier, the fiber optic gyroscope. That's way more effective, and it doesn't have any mechanical parts whatsoever. Everything
Well,
we're talking about
what you
here
guys
has
are,
mechanical parts. You get to the non-mechanical fiber optic gyros, and then you're or fiber
yeah,
yeah
but
fiber,
see,
And
fiber Go ahead.
if the Earth,
and
yeah,
you
but
actually
see, if the
have
Earth is
Well,
spinning,
hold on, fight the flirt. Let him talk. Go ahead, hip hop hippie.
if the Earth is spinning under the gyroscope, or it's spinning under the pendulum, it would be spinning under airplanes and helicopters.
It does.
But it
That's
doesn't.
we've discussed this the whole time.
No,
Yeah,
it doesn't. It
we've
doesn't
already
because you
talked
would
about
just be
how
able
it.
to hover in a helicopter. No, you can hover in a
But
helicopter,
okay, so why
and the
did you
ground
bring
would
up the
spin
basic
toward you. You
principles
wouldn't
of
even have to
physics?
fly.
oh my
Why did you
gosh,
bring up the basic principles of physics, which include
it's circled
conservation
back.
of momentum?
I mean, if the Earth indeed spins under the pendulum,
Hmm.
it would spin under a helicopter and plane, but it doesn't.
Right, right. But the pendulum does
So,
not. The pendulum is free moving in space. Okay, it's not attached to the ground. It doesn't leave the ground with the ground. All right. That
well,
we're not
neither
talking
are
about something that goes
airplanes.
into flight. Yeah, no, airplanes leave the ground, helicopters leave the ground, but when they leave the
Yeah,
ground, they
they
are
do.
attached to the ground. When they leave the ground, they are attached to the ground, and then they start flying over, or they
Well, how
start
do they leave the
rotate.
ground if they're attached to the ground?
They just generate lift, but they still have their linear momentum that they have to that they have to conserve. And when I'm talking about the pendulum not moving, the pendulum itself moves, but the way its position, its rigidity in space, the way the line that it swings across doesn't move. So that's where the problem is that line stays in a straight line while the rest of the pendulum moves. So as that line's holding its line, it's turning relative to the rest of the pendulum. That's what you're actually measuring.
Okay, well, a helicopter just hover in
It's a
its
completely different
in its.
process. When the helicopter
Let's
The
leaves
say
the
the
ground
helicopter's
Earth would
using
still
the
be spinning.
at
atmosphere.
at okay, but at the equator, let's say a helicopter lifts off the ground. It lifts off the ground with an initial velocity of 1,000 meters per second in the direction of
Well, you're
rotation.
assuming it does. Well, you're assuming it does because you assume that the Earth is spinning,
You're assuming it
but
doesn't.
it's really just lifting off
No,
off of
that's a
the
proof.
stationary
No,
Earth.
that's a proof of yours to say that the Earth is not spinning. I'm saying that's consistent with the spinning Earth as well, because just like you pointed out before in your citation, the basic laws of
Well,
principle apply to the basic
okay.
principles of physics apply to airplanes and helicopters
Well,
and everything flying, as per the
well, I
FAA
guess
and
I
the
can.
NASA.
Well, I agree with your statement, not about what FAA or the TGF says, but I mean I agree with them too, not in the context that you stated, but yeah, that's fine. I mean, you can use that as a glow proof too, but I mean, it's still like whenever we bring it up, we shouldn't be called crazy for that,
No, but
you know.
the reason why we're calling you crazy is because you'll mention a manual, you'll bring up
So
the
many reasons.
TGF that says that that you should assume that it's a non-rotating stationary Earth. Assume, and then it says because everything about the aircraft flying is following aerodynamics and the basic principles of physics, which include the laws of conservation, which also include the laws of the laws of motion. Those two things must be conserved. If you're excuse me, if you're saying that the Earth, it couldn't happen because the helicopter left the Earth and the Earth should be spinning out from underneath it, then you're violating what you just said as part of what makes this
Or,
the proof for you. You're saying that there is no conservation of momentum. There was no momentum to begin with. The plane
well,
lifted up. It had a zero velocity relative to the surface of the Earth, but the surface of the Earth moved away at 1,000 miles per hour the moment it lifted off. So you'd say that it basically
or
did not conserve its momentum, which is a violation of the basic principles of physics.
Well, they could have just put that in there for people like you or pilots so that they wouldn't question it, like, okay, yeah, of
Of
course.
No,
course. Oh
but
my God.
okay,
But,
but then
but
that's to say
I'm
that
just saying
concept
they
doesn't work.
actually,
No, I understand
but
what you're saying, but
but they
let
actually
me
have
Who are
the flat
they?
Earth model because
but
the
let me
FAA,
explain
Who are
why
they?
that's but let me explain why that's
FAA.
let me explain why that's
All right.
nonsense, okay? Because when you're in an airplane, you flip a quarter up and it doesn't fly backwards. It continues on going forward with you and you catch it, no problem. The same thing happens with a helicopter. It lifts up, it has that 1,000 mile per hour, same 15 degrees, 15-degree rotation. Whatever speed you're at whatever latitude, it maintains that. It conserves that. It moves within the
Or
atmosphere, so it's not dealing with any kind of pushing back or pushing forward. The atmosphere is spinning at 15 degrees per hour too, and all that.
or it's
Since
lifting or
or
it's lifting
it's
off
lift.
of
Hey,
a flat and
hey,
stationary Earth.
no problem. You know what? You could say that if you didn't get the 15-degree rotation on the fiber optic gyro. Yes, that's an argument to support. That's evidence to support a flat Earth. But you know what? The moment that we find a contradiction in the flat Earth, you can also say it's evidence to support a globe Earth as well. So if we can contradict the flat Earth with another piece of evidence, then we just know the Earth is not flat. Just like you said with the FAA article, it works under Mach 3. It works for non-ballistic, or it doesn't work for intercontinental ballistic missiles, and it doesn't work for objects in low Earth orbit. That's what the FAA said. It said, yes, under these other circumstances, fine, assume it's flat. But on these circumstances, assuming it's flat is not going to work. You're going to result in some kind of error. Therefore, the Earth is not flat.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, guys, but I got to get out of here.
Hey,
Um,
excuse me. I appreciate you coming, Hip Hop Hippie. Much better
yeah,
conversation than last time, and we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up in the future, man. I'd love to educate you on a few things about the globe Earth, and I appreciate you trying to educate me about the flat Earth. Keyword trying.
cool. Thanks a lot, and thanks for a lot for having me on. And you guys have a good night, and hope everybody has a nice, beautiful life. And thanks, Craig, for moderating. Did a good job. And I'll see you guys later.
All right, bro. Take it easy.
Yep. Bye.
Oh, I just nipped out to get a drink, then came back and he was gone.
Okay. All right, so we'll go to the chat. Everybody, thoughts? We'll start with you, Fight the Flat Earth, since they're on a little bit of a delay. What are your thoughts about this this confrontation?
Circular.
Circular?
Yeah, it seemed to be a case of explain this. Okay, here we've explained it. Yeah, but explain this. Okay, we'll explain it. But explain the first thing again. And although I'm got to give Hip Hop Hippie props because quite near the beginning, when I demonstrate to him that actually within military manuals they do have to take into account rotation of the Earth, he actually admitted, and this is the first time I've ever heard a flat earther say this, he
Oh,
admitted that he
yeah.
was wrong.
Yeah. No, a shout
So,
out to him for at least admitting
props.
that. Let's see. Mama Murder
Yeah,
says
I was
Hip
quite
Hop
happy with
Hippie. Mama Murder says Hip Hop Hippie is a denier of logic. Yeah. Lots of illogical statements there. Basically quoting a manual that basically says that you have to, this manual only works when you adhere to, certain restrictions like speed or height or anything like that, then it only works then. So therefore you can't really use that, especially when it says be sure to also that this manual also takes in the basic concepts in physics. You can't then just start denying basic concepts of physics.
Uh-huh.
All right, let's go.
So-
Let's see who's next. All right. This was a TC Lucas. That was a much more civil conversation than before. Yes, it was. I think people like the shit shows better, but yeah, it was a great conversation. I wasn't.
It's nice.
wasn't
It's
mad
nice
at
to
him
have
at
the
all.
change of pace.
Leah's
He
logic
certainly
agrees with
wasn't
you.
as aggressive as last time, was he?
No. Last time he went full die hard on me from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Chrismer, are you allergic to bullshit? I mean, it's the only real explanation why you're sneezing so much. No, actually, I've been cleaning a lot, so I've been inhaling a lot of dust over the past couple of days, and it's been making me kind of choke a little bit. But I appreciate you guys being understanding of that. Clifford Reynolds, I think Hip Hop Hippie was very confused about all your points, so he kept running in circles. Yeah, that was kind of the thing. Is like I explained to him everything, like everything you could. Book check. This was kind of boring, to be honest. Yeah, I know it would have been better for the shit show, but at least we got some shit worked out. All right,
Janie made a good point. The FAA does not train pilots. They're only interested in controllers, which are only interested in approximate 120 range, basically flat. And that's what we were trying to explain to him, is that as far as the airplane is concerned, it is flying above a non-rotating stationary Earth, because it has to assume that to be able to get accurate details of where it's going and everything.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Go ahead. Demonic Davro says he has lots of information but no comprehension of the words in his salad. That was something that I picked up on. It was like he was reading everything at first. I was like, what the hell?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You don't
I
know
picked
this
that up.
shit?
Right,
Like, I
that's
didn't
why
read
I
up. I
jumped
didn't
in.
read nothing. I had to look up just to verify that it was parallax that we used to measure Polaris, which it was. I'm not an astronomer, so forgive me for not knowing everything.
I picked up on it, and I noticed a couple of people in the chat were saying it sounds like he's reading a script, so I had to ask him, because it honestly felt like he was just going through Eric DeBay's 200 proofs. Right? It was just like some script.
Says hip hop, or philosopher of nonsense says Hip Hop Hippie was brave, but also sounded like a slack-jawed basement dweller. Well, I think, like I said, I appreciate him coming on and at least being relatively cool. We'll get to the rest of them here in a second. Let me go. My chat just jumped again. Okay. Anaceto Maldonado Jr. Deflection is the broadsword of the ignorant. Yeah, deflection, big time. I agree with you there. Okay, so
could I just say quickly, team, for anyone that was watching my live stream yesterday that cut off abruptly, it was because my internet died in my house. So if any of you guys here had super chatted me yesterday, sorry I don't read them out, and I will read them at the beginning of my next live stream. All right, so please don't think I ignored you all for the super chats. It was literally my internet died, and I had to get Team to log into my YouTube to shut the stream down. My team,
right?
Yeah.
Speaking of,
thank you for your super chats, guys.
Speaking of super chats, I'll get to mine here in a second too. We're just gonna go through this chat log. Aussie Globehead, the actual robot of all robots, the original over 9,000. That's what his nickname is. Over 9,000. Derp a derp. Yeah, exactly. Aussie derp a derp. Hip Hop Hippie had the sniffles. I think I don't know. He didn't sound like he was too enthusiastic either, but I definitely had the sniffles. Brunkle Buck, which is probably the coolest name on the fucking internet right now. Finally, my sis aunt has been waiting all night. Yeah, it's a brunkle and a sis aunt. Zombie Robot Sheep, at least he was respectful, listening, and staying quiet when appropriate. Yeah, he was a lot better of a conversational piece today, for sure. I hope he watches this. I appreciate you, Hip Hop Hippie, and you're more than welcome to come back on in the future. Speaking of which, Chrismer, Hip Hop Hippie is a farewell. Thank you.
Chrismer, your ASCII art is just badass. I love it.
He's a beast mode. It says, the next time you'll be asked about parallax, you have the Hipparcos catalog, the Gaia mission, and several other sources that I'll be delighted to provide. Yeah, Embrick, when I said that, I was about 95% sure that we've measured most stars using parallax, at least the stars that are pretty local universally to us. So yes, I would love to have that information so I can have something to reference. That'd be awesome. Reach out to me through my Discord. Mods, drop a Discord link in there for everybody. All right, Robert Leger, listening to his head hurt when you use big words was hilarious. Yeah, I did notice that. He kind of sat there quiet sometimes when I explained something to him, like he was trying to wrap his head around it. Paid NASA shill, which FAA manual are you referring to? It was him that was referring to the manual, but it's the one that talks about the TGF, the target generating something. I think target
Frequencies?
generation. It's a way to train
Something.
certain pilots. Like you can, I don't know exactly. I did the research on it for a video a while back. That's why I knew what he was talking about. But it's all basically just every time they talk about in these manuals, they all use the word assume. Assume. Do you know why you assume it? Because laws of motion are a thing. You can't just deny those laws of motion, guys. All right, let's see. What's up? How you doing, Psionic Monk? Hey, what's up, bro? How you doing? Doing good. Just had me a flurfer for dinner. Robert Legere,
thanks for the FTFE. Sorry, I just saw Christopher do FTFE ASCII art. That's awesome. I love it.
Thanks, Bro Sidon, King of the Broshin, or the Broshin. Yeah, no problem, big bro. All right, let's see. Ali Hamidan. I hope I said Mydan. I'm going to say it like Simon or Sidan, but I'm going to say Mydan. Okay, I hope I got that right. Team Skeptic, did you watch Conspiracy Cats vs. Nathan Thompson on Simon Dan's channel? Absolute destruction. Yeah, it was amazing. I've had several emails laughing at him several times between me and Nathan Thompson.
If you guys didn't know, I produced that for Simon Dan, and the channel art was done by Creaky Blinder.
Philosopher of Nonsense, Flat Earthers cannot find the edge because they went off it a long time ago. Yes. And Mama Murder dropped the Discord link. I appreciate you doing that. Okay, we can measure parallax up to 1 kiloparsec. How many light years is that, Embrick, if you don't mind? All right, Chrismer, don't have one for Team Skeptic yet, but here's yours. Aw, that's so cute of you, Chrismer. Dickhead. On my stream, you're going to fight the flat earth on my stream, really? Okay. I'll go on your stream next time and just post pictures of Godless Engineer and ASCII art. Boom.
You know,
All
if you
right,
post a picture of Godless Engineer's penis on your channel, it appears on my channel.
Oh, yeah, it's a bunch of white boxes. Fills up like 3 columns of things, and it goes on. It bleeds into other people's. Yeah, and it bleeds into other people's live streams. Jack Daniels 10101 Team Skeptic, you should be citing Wolfie's videos with any of these pilot flying. Yeah, I did. I brought it up towards the end because I understand how some of this stuff works. I've learned about what the pendulous vanes are and how they make the corrections. There were some things I got wrong, I think, or things I didn't explain as well as I could have. But I'm not an airline pilot. You know, I'm just trying to answer his questions. Psionic Monk, I haven't gotten my...
Wolfie 6020 has the best videos for that.
Yeah, and I'll refer anybody to Wolfie 6020 for airline videos. I haven't gotten my new 2019 shill manual. Any important updates? Yeah, Psionic. Yeah, lots of updates. Can't go over them on air or they wouldn't be secretive anymore. But yeah, we'll just go with that.
Internal comms.
All right, let's see. Team Skeptic, then we, the astronomers, use the cosmic ladder, which I could explain in detail when and to whom you like. You know, might have to get you on, Embrick, one day. Come talk about all that. Stephen Rose, I'm impressed with your patience. I didn't know how you can go over the same thing repeatedly without losing it. I tried, because I do want to try to explain things for people, even when I get them slightly off. I still like to explain them. My bad for trying to be so over-explanatory of things. Philosopher of Nonsense. A parsec is defined as the distance at which one astronomical unit subtends an angle of 1 arcsecond, which corresponds to 648,000 divided by pi astronomical units. You know, I'll go ahead and look into that, Philosopher of Nonsense. Team, you've got no name. Team, you've got the patience of a saint. You and Bob the Science Guy would be a dream team teachers. Oh, man, I have a friend of mine that actually wants... His girlfriend teaches a class, and she's asked me if I would go in and talk to them about how the Earth is not flat and how we know. I was like, oh, it would be my honor to explain to actual people who need to understand this, not adults, how to explain how they themselves can determine that the Earth is not flat. But, all right, so I think that's about it. Oh, I got a couple more, hon. Yeah, you're as much of an airline pilot as Bob Nodell is. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for pointing that out, guy. No, you're right, actually.
I would trust you to fly a plane more than Bob Nadell,
Mama Murder
even though you're a
73.
Lego man.
Team Skeptic was playing the good teacher tonight. Yeah, I was. I was trying to, at least. Paid NASA shill. Your payment is being exchanged into Lego money. Yeah, that's the best way. So I can go buy all those fucking replacement parts. Dandelion S. Thanks, Team Skeptic Fight to the Flat Earth, for letting Hippie back on. Glad it went well. Thank you very much, Dandelion. If for those of y'all that don't know, she's the girlfriend of Hip Hop Hippie. He was actually
Fiancé.
a really fiance. I'm sorry. I don't want to assume anything. But yes, both of you. He's welcome to come back in the future, and we can have another civilized talk. I think everybody wants it to be a little bit more of a train wreck next time. Maybe we could, each come with one bag of poop to throw at each other, and people will like that.
Just
too.
getting drunk beforehand, Dandelion, that would do.
Oh, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll drink with. Hey, in fact, True Rex Gaming, Team Skeptic, I had to start drinking whiskey. I should have drank some whiskey. And let's see, I think I can get through all of it. Philosopher of Nonsense, Team Skeptic, isn't it interesting how flat earthers use circular logic to defend a flat earth? Yeah, I think it's not interesting. It's frustrating. But yeah, no, it's definitely it can be a little bit frustrating when they say, well, what about this part of physics? And you're like, well, what about this? What about when that same thing you just brought up applies to this situation and it debunks your original argument? And they're like, oh, but that's not, I don't believe in that. And you're like, huh? You just brought it up. Christmas, still waiting on an email to send that little project to. Oh, yes, sorry, sir. I will get to you. Hey, for those of y'all that don't know, I'm moving. I got a new place. I paid for all my stuff to get transferred over. It's all going down this weekend, so that's why I haven't had an occasional I like Dandelion, what she said there. Thanks, guys. An occasional shit show is actually good. Yes, it is, and we'll have them in the future, I'm sure, and look forward to it. But yeah, I've moved, or I've got the new place. I move in on the 15th. That's why I'm doing my little moving fund down in the bottom, just to kind of help ease the pain of, moving the studio and putting all the new lights in. And I got some new stuff coming out for you guys. Y'all just stay tuned. But I forgot why we started talking about that and why I just jumped over to the. Oh, I was gonna say because that's why I haven't put out very many videos this week. I haven't really done anything this week because it's been a total move effort and total getting things set up. So please forgive me and be patient with me. But at the same time, we will definitely get caught up once I get moved in. All right, Clifford Reynolds.
And once Team's all settled in his new place, we'll get science and satire going as well.
Yes, that's another thing too. We haven't really jumped on that because I knew all this was going down, and I knew I was going to have to get through this move before I could really dedicate myself full time to YouTube, which is when we're going to start doing science and satire.
Yeah.
All right, Clifford Reynolds. Here's to a good move, Team Skeptic. I wish I had an alcoholic drink to drink with you. I still need Embrick. I still need a Flurfer's idiot to explain my PhD thesis in stellar spectroscopy. I need to know the real science behind my actual work. Yeah, love to get on somebody who knows how to talk about spectroscopy and how we know the moon is not its own light source. Robert Leger, Team Skeptic, you never told me your story you had for me. I would have to remember what story it is, but I'm sure I'll tell you one day when you're cool enough. Leah's Logic, here's the stress-free move, Team Skeptic. Thank you, Leah. Philosopher of Nonsense Team Skeptic makes the world go round. LOL. Yes. Okay, we're done. We got through all of them. We're now going to head over to Super Chats. Zombie Robot Sheep, Team Skeptic, you have a new flat. Yes, I do. I have a new place. It's been a long time coming. It's part of my move into full-time YouTubing. Okay, so let's go over all the super chats. All right, Demonic Davros donated $2 Australian. Hip Hop Hippie loves his hashtag Brunkle. Yes, the Brunkle, the actual originator of the Brunkle, Demonic Davros. Might need a picture of you for that Brunkle T-shirt that's coming out, Demonic. Jane Doe, $10. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That goes towards my moving fund, and that helps out a lot. My brain really hurts after that. Yeah, mine too. As you can tell, my voice is kind of going out because I've been so busy and I'm dealing with all this coughing and shit. But I appreciate that, Jane Doe. Jeffrey Graycheck, Hip Hop Hippie is honest if nothing else. After he stopped reading the Eric Dubé script, he seemed to give things more thought. Yeah, again, I don't... Him reading that was... To me, I try not to read anything. See, that's the thing, is I try not to read anything because I want to... I should be able to know how to talk about the things that I'm telling you about. So if I can't, I don't just read it. You know, if I make an assertion and I need to find something to back my assertion, that's a little bit different than just having a prepared statement to read. But he did address, well, I say he did address the points. Several times I asked, I brought something up that debunked what he said, and he just continued on with whatever the narrative was that he was talking, without really addressing my rebuttals. But that's fine. That's fine. We'll get to that next time. Jeffrey Grayjack, $5. Hip Hop Hippie is on. Oh, yeah, I just read that one. Thank you very much for the super chat. B-Boy J Boogie, $2 to super chat. Hip Hop Hippie failed 3rd grade. Poor guy. Yeah. 9-year-olds, you know. I think that's 3rd grade. No, that's 10-year-olds. So, I'm part of the 9-year-old army. I'm a 9-year-old who happens to have an education as well. Bubble Burster donated $2 to Super Chat. How do you calculate drop or weight using density? Well, you can if you know the weight of something and you know its relative density and you know the gravitational pull, then you could do that, but that's also taking into account gravity. I see what you're saying. You can't use density to calculate weight. Yes. But you could use it if you knew the weight of something else and you knew their relative densities and you were in the same gravitational field or the same forces were acting upon you. Then yes, you could do that. But that's not what he was saying, and I do get what you were saying. So yeah, good call. B-Boy J Boogie, 1999 through Super Chat. For Cream Skeptic, good luck with the move. Cream Skeptic is coming back. The moment I move and I get my VR set back up, Cream Skeptic will make an appearance. It will be a long appearance. We will do a live debunk. Fight the Flat Earth will be there. He will not be taking a bite of that American confecture, like he called me before, and I loved when he called me that. That was so amazing. But yeah, all that. All right, B-Boy J Boogie. Hey, thank you, B-Boy J Boogie. I see that you helped out a lot. And again, for everything that I'm having to go through right now with the move, it put a severe strain on me personally. Not something that I can get back from. It just the overlapping of paying 2 rents and a deposit of a lot. We'll just say that, a lot. And this is helping out. So thank you guys so much for all your help. B-Boy J Boogie, $4.99. Weight is a force, mass is not. Exactly. And we know this because we can
That guy
take
gets
mass.
it.
Yeah, he gets it. Why does B-Boy J Boogie get it? Another stone. Okay, hold on. Oh, it just jumped on me. Shit. Okay, we'll go to the next one. B-Boy J Boogie, again, $10. Hip Hop Hippie, acceleration needs force, sir. Buoyancy is a force that has nothing to do with things falling. If things fall and accelerate, why? Yes, again, when you quote an FAA manual that talks about the basic principles of physics, you cannot deny the basic principles of physics later. The basic principles of physics say that if there is no force, then the object does not move. What force is this? Where's this force coming from? If the object moves on its own, when you let go of it, where's the force that's making it accelerate? That's called gravity.
Magic.
Or Fight the Flat Earth, where are you at? Fight the Flat Earth, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? Go!
I've lost my cursor. Wait, one.
No, go! Why? Why fight the
that's the
Flat
wrong
Earth?
one.
Go! Oh my God.
Gravity!
Yes, there it is.
Gravity!
Okay,
wasn't
gravity.
prepared.
Excuse me. Aussie Globehead donated 100 Aussie dollars. Thank you, you freaking Australian shill you. Team Skeptic, I want my brain cells back. Derp, derp. You get it at the next
Sorry.
Aussie Globe Shill show. I'll give you back brain cells that night. Richard Hunt, 199. Why is there more pressure at the bottom of the ocean? I brought that up. I brought that one up. That's a great example. If there's nothing pulling down on the top of the water, then why is it more pressure at the bottom? Inexplicable. If you can explain it, please do. If you can't, then please just get on board or something. I don't know. Now, it says Carl Christofferson has become a new member, which I don't know. Let me go check to see if that was just a... Sometimes it says that when it's just somebody re-upping for the membership. Either way, all you Ding Force members out there, please share the love. Show the dingers. Show the emojis. I'm sorry, not the emojis. The mankinis. Put the mankinis on display. Let the wanger hang out. There you go. All right, let me go.
Infinite Team Skeptics.
Oh, are you creating infinite me's? Hold on,
Yeah.
let me fix that. It doesn't show it. Are you just doing it for fun?
It was on the stream just then.
All right, let me get to my channel memberships and see if he's a new one. Either way, welcome Chris Christofferson to the Team Skeptic, or Carl. I saw it. Goddamn, Carl. Carl Christofferson. And a little fat girl. Thank you very much for being a subscriber. Now look, guys, I'm not being an asshole here. There's an actual person who became a channel member called a little fat girl. So please forgive if that offends anybody. But it's not me. It's a fucking little fat girl that did it. All right, then thank you, Carl Christofferson. Everybody, show a little fat girl the mankini. Give a little fat girl all the mankinis and dingers you can possibly give her or him. Oh, why do these people do this to me? I don't know. I don't know. All right, Carl Christofferson donated 50 secs. Ooh, you know what I'm doing tonight. Hip Hop Hippie, how do you determine the burden of proof, and what's your definition of evidence, not proof? Team Skeptic and Fight the Flat Earth, keep up the excellent job. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it so much. And welcome to welcome to Ding Force. You know what to do. Mankinis and bells all over the place. 549 Canadian dollars. Nicholas Kincaid. Don't stop the work, good guys. I don't intend on doing it. I love doing this shit. Even the ones that are a little bit more talkable. I wish I could do this every day for you guys. I really wish I could. It's hard to find people to have a conversation with like we just had with Hip Hop Hippie. And Fight the Flat Earth can attest to this. To find somebody that will come on and talk about these crazy-ass ideas with you and not get triggered by you explaining your point of view, it's hard to find that, is it not? Fight the Flat Earth? Are you going to back me up, or are you going to make me look like a jackass?
Yeah, you're a jackass. I'll just let you leave. No, it's becoming increasingly hard. It's becoming increasingly hard to actually find people to debate. Like, I kind of have to go and scrape the bottom of the barrel to find flat earthers now. Like, the 33 UC guy I debated yesterday, you know, like...
I get people that ask me, but I look at their channel and I'm like, no, you don't even have any content. I can't do it until you put something out where I know you're not just some troll that's just a sock account you created 3 years ago that you rotate off through bannings, you know. But let's see. Oh, ProSlice56, $20. Tell this guy he can watch MIT classes on YouTube. Yeah, see, I even do that. I went and watched Leonard Susskind's lectures on special relativity. Great lecture series, free to watch, Stanford University. Okay, for anybody that wants to go learn without paying for the extremely difficult course with all the lab work. Of course, you're not going to get the lab work and all this other stuff. But the lectures, you can get the lectures for free from most universities. I highly suggest going and watching a few lectures, guys. All right, let's see. Clobe Monk, you guys should show him what a straight line looks like on a cone. Oh yeah, right. It would blow his mind addressing level at or the level altitude problem. Yeah, exactly. It's hard to explain what he's talking about. This is more geometrical, like geometrical theorems and geometrical properties of cones and whatnot, and how a line actually It's always turning. A straight line always turns on a cone, just like it does on the Great Circle, for instance. If you were to give the Earth the XY axis and you draw a straight line across the surface, it's a straight line that's constantly curving around the surface. Same thing. It's like if you take a line of latitude and you go around it, it's doing the same thing. Same thing happens in conical structures. Actually, there's some pretty cool stuff to learn about that too, as far as mathematical theorems and how they, describing parabolas and all these other cool things using cones and slices. It's pretty amazing. Kind of math nerd stuff, but whatever. Scrat the Skeptic Squirrel. The wrong numbers he's trying to calculate with are for sea level anyway, not 35,000 feet. I don't remember what numbers they were, but again, there was someone else pointed. I made a mistake one time of saying that something should be significantly different at 35,000 feet, which is 7 miles up, and someone had to remind me that from the center point of the Earth, there's 6,000 miles. Or no, I'm sorry, 4,000 miles, right? 4,000 miles. Isn't that what, or 3,700 miles? I'm sorry. It's been a long day. 37, 81.
It's 5 a.m.
Yeah, hold on. I'm getting that radius of Earth in miles. Because I think it's, I was starting to say, let's see. Yeah, 3958. It's 4,000 miles. I started to say kilometers, or gave the numbers for kilometers. But anyway, let me get back to my Super Chats window so I can keep going down them. Okay, so, well, that just took me all the way to the, oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong window. Okay. Yeah, but anyway, I made that mistake too one time, thinking it was a huge amount of difference in distance because you're going up 35,000 miles, or a huge amount different in drop, and it's not. It's pretty much the same thing. Christ Puncher, $2. I have a cape and a chiseled jaw. Ooh, gangster, you're just like me. Demonic Davros, this guy's Brunkle had relations with his sis aunt, and now he's got this idiot. Kirk Bastek, $9.99. How many times can you read something that proves him wrong and he thinks it's right? I don't know. I've called him out several times on it. Michael Tremblay, $5 Canadian. He got a gyro up his arse, so he's got a 15 degrees drift in his brain. Multiply that by 24 hours, and his brain is a globe. 360 degrees. You're exactly right, Michael Tremblay. Godless Engineer, oh, $2. I love you, bro. I love you too, Godless Engineer. Oh, man, I should have had you come on.
Everyone's here.
Oh, shit. I thought it was just me and you. I should have had you come on, man. You could have added to the conversation. Yuhan Roderick, yawn, another flat earther, cherry picking the same stuff. Yeah, no, wish they'd get off that. Unfortunately, there's nothing new for them. It's all the same stuff. Aaron Bates, planes and trim would work same on a globe as flat. Seriously, it's all moot for both sides. Just move on. Gyro varies on. Varies only there to keep the gyro usable. Yep. And I'm not even an expert on the gyroscope. I just know this is how I got kicked out of the Flat Earth group, because I worked on gyroscopic modules, which not just gyroscopes. There's other things in it, and I only tested them. I just brought up the fact that everything that they're saying about the gyroscope is true, but there's other portions of the gyroscopic module that take that into account. And I believe that's, since then, I've learned about the pendulous vanes and whatnot. All right, Aaron Bates. Oh, I think that was, oh, wait, no. All airplanes since invention has trim. There is no continual adjustment. Fly at altitude and set your trim so altitude doesn't change. Cruising. Yeah. Oh, there it is. A little fat girl has become a member. Schrodinger's cat, what's up, bro? $1.99 through Super Chat. I have artillery manuals that speak of Coriolis. Yeah, I think maybe you shared that with Fight the Flat Earth, but Fight the Flat Earth shared it on here. Good job. Thank you. Lord Burns donated $5 to the moving fund. Good luck with the move. Thank you, sir. Pushing that U-Haul in a few days. Mobile DK donated $2 through Super Chat. Thank you. Leah's Logic, $5 or $5 Aussie dollars through Super Chat. Kiri and I have a strategy for the meme war. You should surrender, Team Skeptic. I don't care what you have. I don't care what you have. Y'all ain't got nothing on me. We'll see about that meme war there, Leah. All right, Christopher Jarvis donated 199 through Super Chat. No message. Thank you. MA2 Fletcher Eisler. Meat tube emoji. Yeah, that's next. Meat tube emoji. Plus, I think now if I get 3 more members, we get 3 new emojis with 3 new members. So if anybody wants to become a member of the channel, get early access to videos in the future. We haven't started that yet, but in the future, I just now got my ability to have community-only posts. So there's going to be a lot of community-only stuff going on, just as with the patrons. I believe this week I'm going to be doing a Patreon-only hangout. I'm not sure exactly whether it's going to be live or other people or just Discord people can watch. So if you want to watch just a private hangout between me and a bunch of patrons, then you're more than welcome to join the Discord and get the link to that. We'll be doing channel member-only stuff, and the Discord has specific rooms for members and for patrons. So if you guys want to be a part of that, just join and you'll have a good time. All right, so let's see. B-ball for life, dinger smasher emoji. Yeah, that's oh god, look, there's a whole bunch of people that just started putting what kind of emojis they want. B-ball for life, dinger smasher emoji. That's been a pretty good one. I think I'm gonna do that. Oh wait, that's oh shit. Okay, ha. Now I'm reading Super Chats from 3 days ago. My bad, guys. All right.
New member.
All right, now let me go over the newest ones that came through while I was doing that. Johan Roderick became a member. Yeah, baby. Ding Force. Show him the emojis. You get all these nice, cool emojis, and you get to see me in a mankini. Oh, my God. You don't know what you're missing out, but now that you have access to all the emojis, you can find out. Unfortunately, I have had a few people ask me how they can use the Skeptic Mankini without it being a live stream or a show. A couple of guys, I think they wanted to show some chicks that to kind of help them get in the mood, because once you look at me in a mankini, you'll never forget that. You'll never forget that. If you need any lube, guess what? Looking at the mankini will make your eyes hurt and water. Just use the water coming out of your eyes as lube, guys. See, that's reason enough right there to become a fucking member. Free lube right from your eyes. Okay, let me get back to these super chats. Oh man, I'm killing myself. Thomas Miller, $20. Insert something witty here. I think that's pretty witty there, Thomas Miller. Thomas Miller, you are a fucking idiot. How's that for wit, brother?
He's one of my patrons. He can't be an idiot.
No, he's one of my patrons, and I think he may or may not be a channel member. I'm not sure. But Thomas Miller, thank you so much for your support. I do appreciate it very much. Let's see. Johan Roderick, wake up, Greg. Oh, guys, channel members, I want you to know something. Do you guys want a Colonel Greg emoji? Because I've got a good one. I've got one I can make. A Colonel Greg emoji can be a future emoji. In fact, I can remove one of the insignificant emojis and replace it with him. Leave a 1 if you want a Craig or Greg emoji.
Hit those ones, guys.
Leave a 42 if you don't.
Hit those ones.
Andreas
Greg,
L.
the USS Nail Clipper.
Let's see. Andreas Eld. I hope I said that right. ELDH. It's sex. So I guess that's Switzerland. Is that right, or is it Sweden? I think that's Switzerland.
It's
anyway.
sex. That's all you need.
Yeah, it's 50 sex. It's universal. Still waiting for FTFE's mail about Project Aristosthenes. Yeah, when you gonna keep us updated on that, bruh? Dennis Real.
Go ahead. If you sent me an email, I'm sorry I haven't responded, but I literally have so many that it's just taken me a while to get to them all. So in the next few days, I'll be trying to send out a burst email to everybody that has responded for the Project Aristosthenes, which is at the moment close to 2,000 people. All right. So if you have sent an email and I haven't responded, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just one person, and I'll get you.
Well, I forgot that I have on the slow chat, but it looks like there's ones are dominating, especially with Robert Leger's 40 ones that he put in there. So yes, we'll get that Colonel Greg coming out real soon. All right, let's see.
Nice.
We also have Dennis Reel. I want to see, or $5 Australian. Thank you, sir. I want to see FDFE debate Team Skeptic on whose Earth is rounder. No, you don't. You'll unsubscribe from him. I will demolish him. I will make him look worse than flat earthers.
Yuck.
I will make
Dude,
his
I would
mom
wipe the floor with your Lego
unadopt him.
ass.
Listen, I would make his mom unadopt him. De-adopt. You are a de-adoptable child.
I would make
new,
your mum adopt me.
They will make a
Your
new
mum would adopt me.
marginalized group, okay? They will make a new marginalized group in Europe called the De-Adopted Group, and it will consist of one person, Colonel Greg, and his halfway round Earth. Carl
Flat
Christopherson.
globe, everyone.
20 sex. Oh, I'm having so much sex tonight. Can you forward my question to any FLB? I guess, what's FLB?
Not sure.
Leave FLB in the chat what you want, what it means, and I'll see. Because I don't have a problem with that. The USS Nail Clipper, fuck the world, from Christ Puncher, $2 Canadian. All right, guys, I think that's about it for tonight. Let's see. Okay, hey, guys, just don't berate Dandelion. She's been a true, her and Hip Hop Hippie have been true soldiers through this whole thing. So at least give her the benefit of the doubt of not just berating her because she is akin to Hip Hop Hippie. But yes, guys, I think that's going to be where we're going to end it tonight. You may not see too much coming off of me, or coming from me. I'm sorry, I said coming off of me because I'm reading the chat. Flash video. Let me see. Let's see. I'm trying to see where he sent that. I can't find it. Oh, FLB, and it's from Carl Christopherson. Somebody's yelling at me. Oh man. Oh, Ozzy. Oh, Ozzy. Do you see that?
What do you do? What do you do?
You see what he suggested?
You can make Colonel Greg Father Bronco. Okay.
Yes, Colonel Greg, and hey, you got to get the spelling right, Ozzy. Hold on, I'm gonna put the spelling in the chat for you.
There's at least 4 A's and a couple of G's in there.
There it is, right there. You gotta.
Yeah,
He's a military colonel spelled this way though.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, guys. I think that's where we're gonna end it today. Fight the Flat Earth. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to this fine group of wonderful people that have stuck around to the end of our nonsense?
Well, thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you didn't lose too many brain cells. Tomorrow, I will have episode 21.
Let me hold on. I'm sorry. I missed the super chat. I'm glad Mama Murder pointed it out. $5 from Mama Murder, who you guys should be subscribed to. She's putting out content now. Great content creator. Facts over feelings about shape of the earth and all the beautiful things in the sky. We are a small speck in a gorgeous expanse, and to help you move. $5. Thank you so much. Yes, facts over feelings. I deal with it all the time. I would love to have all this utopia, nice flat earth where we don't have to worry about asteroids and comets hitting us, and don't even worry about science and this and that, and just live in this beautiful world. But that's for books and TV shows. This is fucking reality. Reality ain't that way, guys. The earth's a globe. It's not fucking flat. And flat earthers are fucking idiots. God, I thought I was going to rage ding tonight, and I didn't even rage ding.
No, didn't need to.
Anyway, what do you have coming up? Fight the Flat Earth before we get out.
Tomorrow, I've got episode 21 of Flurfs Are Idiots. It's kind of about Nathan Oakley and quantum erasure and the world's first flat Earth model, featuring Planar Walk. That should be out by about 2300 hours tomorrow, UK time. That should be fun. Nathan Oakley's a fucking idiot.
Oh, on top of it.
Thank you.
And also, I want to say, for those of y'all that don't know, it looks like we're going to be trying to get together in LA for NunCon. It'll be in October. I'll still be doing the Dallas thing. I'm not sure how many people are all coming down, but I'll still be doing the Dallas thing. But NunCon, if you're in LA and you think you want to see a bunch of us weirdos who are freaking infinite Colonel Griggs. If any of y'all want to see us live and come harass us live and talk shit to us and all that stuff, great. Come find us. We'll be in LA in October. Keep up with the channel and you'll get more information. Other than that, I'm done. Are you done?
I'm done. It's like 5:10 in the morning here. I should have gone to bed ages ago. My wife popped in just now and gave me evil eyes.
Oh, go to fucking sleep. All right, guys. We're done. I'm Father Skeptic, and I'm out. Thanks Hip Hop Hippie, but I'm out. Later.